into the unknown, down the rabbit hole, where it stops, no one knows. We're going head into the unknown. Na, 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 na.
Hi, everybody. What's up? What's up? What's up?
What's
Happy
up?
Saturday to everybody. I am so excited for this show, and thank you, Sluice Investigate, for setting this up
Yes.
and joining me tonight. I am sorry I had you guys waiting. I was enjoying chatting with Bob without everybody, and I was like, I got to start this. I'm just gonna keep doing this all night. So without further ado, though, I want to say hi to everybody in chat, and then I'm going to bring Bob up, and I know you guys are just as excited as I am. And hi, C-Dub, Butterfly Kisses, B Crumbs. Hey, Jay, what's up? Hi, Sleuthy Goosey. Hey, Leonard Amber. Hey, Thelma's Louise, Wheel B, Rainbow Mom, Julio Suave. Is it me with the bad connection? I hope it's just you and not everybody else. Hi, Malicious Intent. Hey, Kelly. Hi, Steph. Welcome. Hey, Sweet Misery. And I know I missed a ton of you guys up here because you guys have been chatting away, but I don't want to make you guys wait anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and bring Bob up, and we're going to get this party started. Hey, Bob.
Hey, Bob.
What is up?
I already told him I stole some time and I was chatting with you without everybody, so we all know.
I'm a talker. It's a good thing you shut that shit down.
I could have just kept going because I'm a talker too, so this should be fun.
No, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you all for inviting me, and I'm excited to do it. So let's dig in, man.
Let's do it. So I was telling you before we started that we've gone through and read this lovely new document. It took us 6 parts to do it. I think about 20 hours total for just the shock and awe of it, and then having to research what parts were actually what I felt was accurate, what people had questions about. We were pulling up Facebook posts and just comparing like what we could actually find that the defense was talking about in their memorandum. So most people in the chat are familiar with the case. They're familiar with the documents. So I kind of just want to get right into asking you some questions about your thoughts.
Let's go.
And who Bob is.
Oh, yeah, and who Bob is. I don't know. I feel like everybody knows Bob. You guys all know Bob,
I feel
right?
it's so natural because it's like you see Bob and you're like, oh, we know who that is. But
Yeah, that's Bob.
maybe we have some new people that don't
All
know
right,
who
yeah.
Bob is.
All right, Bob. Tell
No
me.
doubt, no doubt. And I got a bunch of my homies I see in the chat. So what's up? Jay Bird's in there. Jay, the Shaming of Jay, one of my closest homies. He's also got a great YouTube channel, so y'all should subscribe, check him out. I hang with him a lot. And then my girl, Sleuthy Goosey, she's, I don't know what to say.
I guess I could share.
She's my fave, man. She's my girl. So yeah, my name is Bob Motta. Brief bio, 20+ year trial attorney here in this great city of Chicago. And about 2.5, beginning of pandemic, basically. I'd say 6 months into the pandemic, I grabbed up my family. Like when we found out that they were closing Illinois down, I was like, oh my God, they're closing the courts down. I get to breathe. I get to fucking like breathe for a minute. Pardon my French. I don't know if you do drop
you're
that.
good. Nope, you're good.
Yeah, so, that was the first time in 20 years that I was able to like finally like take a step back from the practice of law, which if you're in criminal defense, it's never ending. It's like you wake up, you're worrying about your cases. You're worrying about it when you're going to sleep. You're just never off duty. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
I like that with a true crime podcast.
Dude, like I didn't know that when I started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You taught me the
So,
same thing.
yeah, it's like, but so I started writing a book. So like I grabbed my whole family, we went out to Arizona. We started renting Airbnbs like for just like bouncing because they were like giving them away. So I just wanted dope pools for like my kids to swim in. I wanted to be in like beautiful weather. So we were out there. I start writing the book, and Allison's like, "Oh, we got to go home." I'm like, "Oh, I'm really killing it on the book." She's like, "All right, we'll stay." So I'm like, So it drags on for 3 months. When I get back, she finally drags me back here. And at that point, I had been negotiating with Joe Berlinger, who ended up dropping that Gacy thing. And I had these Gacy tapes because my dad was like Gacy's lawyer back in '78, one of his 2 trial attorneys. And I had sat on these tapes forever. I didn't know what to do with them. And I'd been tinkering for years with the concept of a pod. I'm like, oh man, like I love podcasts. I'm an auditory guy. It's my jam. I'm a great storyteller because I've been, closing cases. I've been closing arguments for literally 20 plus years. What you learn from doing that is how to tell a story. Because like I'm always telling people on my podcast is, look, at the core of it, attorneys that are trying cases are storytellers.
I say it all the time.
Well, it's true. I mean, I wasn't at the crime scene, and neither was the prosecutor, and neither were the cops. So we're all getting the evidence in, and we're all interpreting in our own ways, and we're all coming up with our own narratives, and we're trying to sell our story to the jury. So by way of that, I really became a pretty adept at telling a story. I have a pretty decent radio voice. I can write a bit. So I'm like, fuck it, and I went to Allison, my wife. I'm like, who's my law partner and who's just a badass in general. And I asked her, I said, look, I want to do this, but I have to have your blessing because I'm going to basically, she was my law partner. I'm like, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go all in on this pod. It's like, I can't in such a saturated genre of podcasts. Like there's no way unless I go all in on this thing, not just from the creative side, but the marketing side of it as well. Yeah. Because when you're an independent pod, if I'm not with Wondery, which I could have taken the tapes and I could have gone to Wondery and I could have said, look, I got these tapes. This is my concept, pitched it to them, probably made some dough on the front end. And then they would have had creative control, and it's like my Gacy season's 36 episodes. They never would have approved that. Like their shit's 12. Like I'm a deep diver. I deep dive into shit. And so, and I like blew that case wide open, and it was cathartic for me in a lot of different ways. So yeah, I started the pod, and and now we've got the main pod, which is serialized, and it's just me telling stories. And the first season is Gacy, from a very different perspective. I'm not fanboying Gacy. I wanted to focus on the victims for the first time because for 33 young men lost their lives, and I knew nothing about any of them other than the last kid who was killed. And I wanted to make that a focal point in terms of covering that case. I wanted to look at the investigation. How did they get him in 10 days after Chicago police shit the bed for 6 years? And, and then I wanted to cover the trial because my dad was the lawyer. And, to me, it's the greatest thing that's ever been done on Gacy. And it's not really about Gacy. It's like, yes, I played the tapes. So you get that, it makes your skin crawl in terms of how that man had zero empathy, zero remorse. He would talk about killing these kids as if he was taking out the garbage. That's what makes you just pause and think about what you're listening to more than anything else. Even if he's describing killing one of these kids, just his matter of fact, no affect, the guy was terrifying in that sense. So, and then I ended with my dad. I had him read his opening statement, which was mind blowing in terms of an insanity defense. It breaks it down for people that just don't get it. People have such a hard time accepting the fact that people can be broken. Their minds can be so diseased that they're not able to comport their behavior to the law. That's a real thing. It exists in the world. And it doesn't mean that you're acting like a lunatic all the time. It just doesn't. People can't put that together. And with Gacy, you had the eye for an eye type thing. You put 33 kids in the ground, you're going down. I don't give a shit if your mind's diseased or not. So they had it was a impossible mountain to climb. but my father was so eloquent in the way that he broke down what mental illness is at a time in the 70s. And it's still, we're in 2023. We still don't know shit about the human mind. That's facts. We just don't, so like he did it in a way that was just brilliant. And then I end the series with, I was able to convince the lead prosecutor, Bill Kunkel, to read his entire closing argument that put Gacy in the ground ultimately. And it's mind blowing. The whole series, I think it's probably the best podcast ever done, but I'm biased.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Sluice up here would probably agree with you.
Oh, I agree. I loved it. You guys are missing out.
Listen.
You're missing out if you haven't heard it yet.
Yeah, so check that. And then we have the docket. And the docket is where I brought Allison in, who's my partner, who is brilliant. If you love powerful women, I got you. I got you faded, because Allison is all of that and more. And we cover all the
current. I actually told Sluice we're going to make sure that we get her on next time instead of you.
Yes.
So.
Totally. Like, and I told her, I'm like, you need to, because I call her the reluctant hero. Because like I had been going like 2 years in the pod, and everybody's like, oh, we love you, Bob. And like, but we love Allie. I'm like, hey man, I know what my audience is. My audience is 80-20 women to men. So I'm no fool. You know what I mean? It's like, I knew what I had with Allison. I've been married to her, and with, for like, we've been together 20 plus years. She's just an absolute badass, and she's brilliant, so it's like, and I adore her, so it's like, we have that chemistry between us when we're covering these cases, and it's real, it's authentic, and we're both pretty smart, and we both are defense attorneys. So we just break shit down. It hits different than almost anything else out there. And, like, I'm very objective, it's like, I'm a defense guy through and through. My dad was a defense attorney. Allison had wanted to be a defense attorney since she was 5 years old. Literally, I've seen written proof of it, so like, that was what she was going to do. And that's what she did. And, and I'm able to look at things from a more objective point of view than, say, like prosecutors are generally, because they become very tunnel visioned in what they're doing. Whereas, as a defense attorney, objectivity is everything, because I'm trying to come up with an alternate. Okay, you're saying that's what happened. I'm looking at the same evidence, and my guy's telling me he didn't do it. I got to figure this shit out. You know what I'm saying? So I have to be able to look at all avenues. Whereas the prosecutor is very narrow-minded in terms of what they're looking at. They're focused on one individual, and that's true in every case. I don't care if it's high profile or a petty theft.
They already got there. They already went through their tunnel.
They're there, right?
By the time they're there, that's all they were looking at.
That's it. They're done. So, long spiel. If you use that QR code back there, wherever it is, that'll bring you right to the pod. I highly recommend you give it a listen. If you don't like it, I'll give you a full refund. How about that?
With that right there.
So your link tree is also in the chat or in the description of this, and then people are putting it in the chat. So make sure you guys go listen. I know that you guys are freshly starting on YouTube, and so the majority of your content is on your podcast.
Indeed.
So make sure that you guys are listening, and it's available on any Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, all of it. You can go anywhere that you listen to your podcast, and you'll find the Defense Diaries.
Yep. All right. So enough about me. Let's talk about.
All right, we're not going into me because they all know that. We don't need to do that. Let's talk about Delphi. So you actually, because you're not very far, you've covered and followed Delphi since it happened.
Always. It's one of those cases that just, it captured, obviously these two beautiful little girls just go missing, and then they find them immediately and they've been killed. And it's like you just feel so much empathy, and it hits so close to home. It's like it's 2.5 hours. So then, it goes 5 years, goes cold. Then they make the arrest. And, I told Allison, I said, I'm boots on the ground on this shit, man. I'm like, I'm driving out there. Yeah. I got a buddy who lives in Indy. So I'm like, yo, I'm going to crash at yours. He actually lives in Carmel. So I'm like, man, I'm gonna crash at your spot. I got to get up at like 3 and get in line so I get in the courthouse. So yeah, it's been quite an experience thus far. And I mean, we have, as we know now, we ain't seen nothing yet because this.
No, so I don't want to. Even before we go to that, I have to know what your initial thoughts were when you very first heard of the case.
Paper thin.
6.5 years ago. Like, what did the murders? Like, what did you think? Did you immediately think like there's a group of crazy people out there? We got a serial killer. What was your initial thought?
My initial thought was that the ability to be able to control two healthy young females. Libby looked as if a girl, like she didn't take any shit off of anybody ever, you know. And so my immediate thought was like, all right, and this is without knowing what the lay of the land was in terms of Logan's property and being able to access where they end up finding the bodies, getting down the bridge, what they had to do to get over there. And, you know, I'm like, all right, there had to have been, and like, we all heard the leaks, you know, we heard leaks. You don't know what to trust with leaks, but, you know, to me, there always had to have been either multiple people and or a weapon at the front end to get control of the girls, where the you know, the main dude who's getting them down there has a gun trained on both of them, gets them down the hill. And then, you know, but then you got to cross this stream / river / like whatever you want to call it, creek, you know. And it's like, that's my Arkansas family part coming up. Excuse me for that. You know, but, you know, and it's 3.5 feet deep. Like the concept of it being one person was very difficult for me to wrap my mind around. My initial gut was there was more than one person involved, just because, and again, we didn't have the knowledge of, are there ligature marks? Were the girls bound up? Were they tied? Like, how are they controlling 2 girls? You know what I mean? Like my 11-year-old, if she saw a second to fucking bolt, she's gone. You know, I mean, she's not going to, like that. It's the fight or flight instinct for any human being. I don't give a shit how old you are, is going to take hold, and you're going to try to make a move. And I mean, if you're crossing a river, I mean, that's a thing. You know what I'm saying? We're talking chest high, 3.5 foot water in February in Indiana. That's like the, you know, when you get into that water, you know, this isn't like you're luxuriating in a heated pool type shit. This is like the whole thing. To me, always felt like there had to have been more than one person involved. That was my initial thoughts. I am one of the people that never really kind of like fell into the Keegan Kline thing. Like, I know that was a thing. I know that people liked him for it. I think the guy's obviously a massive creep. I don't see him being an active type of guy like that. And that may be me just judging his physical appearance, but I mean, you have to consider that in terms of the ability for him to be able to get this thing done, in terms of, again, controlling 2 girls that are, you know, basically hitting the peak of their, you know, their physical abilities at that age. As we all know, girls mature way faster than boys. You know, I mean, these were a couple of girls that, like, you know, and I don't know if you've ever walked across like a railroad trestle. Like there was a trestle.
No, I would not walk across. Probably when I was their age, I would have. Now in my 40s, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm
no way, right? So in the same, like, there was, like, I grew up in a town called Oak Park, Illinois. Great town. I highly recommend it if you're trying to grow up and raise your kids in an amazing place. But there was a place called the Trestle, and it was the same thing. It was like a trestle just means it's a train tracks that are going over a waterway. So this particular trestle would go over the Des Plaines River, and that is where all the juniors and seniors every Friday would buy a keg from Mario's that for whatever reason would sell to us. We'd bring a keg out there, and 40 or 50 kids would be on the trestle with the kegger, drinking beer till the Forest Preserve police caught us, and we'd all run. And like crossing the trestle is a thing where you have to look down, because, you know, the distance, at least the trestle that we were on, the distance between the ties was probably between 8 to 10 inches. Like these weren't like real, like there was a nice gap, such a big gap that I had a friend who actually slipped through and fell down into the river through the trestle. So my point being, you have to be looking where you're walking when you're on the trestle. This isn't like you can't be paying attention, you know, to something else and just kind of walking haphazardly. You're going to break your ankle, your whole leg's going to slip in, depending on your side, whatever the case may be. There was just a lot of things to me that just spelled multiple people. And in terms of, you know, and I was in all the subreddits, I was reading it all, you know, I know what all the rumors were. I know that people were just obsessed with the Keegan Kline stuff. I thought
we liked Chadwell for a while.
Yeah, for sure. You know, Ron Logan, like, I mean,
that's still a big one.
Still a big one. You know, like, I haven't necessarily excused him. Like, he was far more feasible to me ever than Keegan Kline was. You know, I like, you know, but you got the thing where Kline's bringing him to a river, and he seems to have some kind of knowledge. You know, I mean, clearly they didn't find the weapon that he said they were going to find there, but they did find some clothes. You know, so. I don't know.
Iron looked like in one of the photos too.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of always my gut with it. And, you know, as the years pass, you start to wonder, you know, you're always keeping hope that they're going to make an arrest on it. And, you know, the 2, 3, 4, 5 years goes by and you're like, man, this one doesn't seem like it's going to get solved, you know, and you also have to look at the area, right? It's like, you're rural Indiana. It's either somebody hometown or, like you said early on, just a straight up serial killer that just happened to be in that area at that time. And these two unfortunate girls are the ones who are the unlucky ones, you know, and it's like, I know a lot about serial killers. Like, I've repped them. My father repped them. It's like, it didn't fit to me. It didn't seem right, because it's like there were just too many X factors for me in terms of the girls being there at a certain time. And it was either just dumb luck in terms of it's a serial killer and he just runs into the girls, or it was somehow plotted out. And I just, you know, I mean, we know for a fact that they have certainly gone through all the girls' records, their phone data. And like, if they would have seen anything, it would have been in that PCA. You know what I mean? We know that, we can intuit that
for him, for Richard Allen. Yeah.
Or either way.
Yeah.
Either way. But like, you know, I mean, they've certainly, they got they subpoenaed all the snap shit. They got all the phone data record. They have that all. You know, there's a paper trail with that. That's not like some kind of like mystery. That's some shit where they would have that's the first thing that they're looking at, you know, and that's the first thing they're digging in on. So that tells us that however this came to pass, however this came to be, you know, it's either someone that the girls knew that law enforcement wouldn't have raised a red flag to them if they would have seen, you know, hey, let's meet out at the bridge today. You know, or, you know, because they're still going to be able to see any kind of websites that they've searched. I mean, Cellubrite, like back then, was still pretty decent. Like Cellubrite, like on my
cell phone dump.
Oh yeah.
Well, and beyond that, it's just like you're not deleting anything off the hard drive or your devices. It's all still there. Like, people have this misconception that, you know, they deleted all. No, man, Cellubrite like recovers like 98% of deleted shit. And I know it firsthand from Anthony Garcia's case, because they just dug up all kinds of shit on him that was on like his iPad, his phone, that all of it was deleted and it was all recovered. So they did that, you know, they had all that data. And, you know, I mean, based on what we saw from that PCA, it's just, it's not in there. And no. I try to tell people all the time, as a matter of fact, I got in another Twitter war today. There's just two dudes that are like, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, oh, you know, there's this small camp. And I don't know like who the ringleader is. It likes to put out this information about probable cause affidavits, which people that aren't attorneys and aren't into true crime, and up until the last 3 years had never heard of a fucking probable cause affidavit. Now everybody's a fucking expert on it. So like, and I'm not that guy on Twitter that's like calling out for like, I'm like, okay, if you're gonna argue with me about how they operate and how they're drafted and who drafts them and what they put in them, then give me your fucking credentials. Because mine are, I practiced for 20 years and I read these things for a living. That's what I do.
Mine is that I run a true crime podcast and I've read a few of them myself.
The difference between you and them, Teresa, is you're honest. Like exactly. These other guys are like, oh, do you ask for the credentials of the people that agree with you? I'm like, no, because they're smart. Yeah, I mean, they're listening to what I like. I mean, if 20 years of experience, like as a trial attorney, isn't enough for you to trust what I'm saying is true, and there's always exceptions. There's always exceptions to every rule. But as a general proposition, in a major case, no fucking cop is ever writing a probable cause affidavit ever. They're written by the prosecution. They understand the legal standards. They understand the burdens. They understand the statutes. They know what they have to show to the judge in order to get the thing issued, period. Mm-hmm. And then what they do, they of course get all the facts from law enforcement. The cops come in and they sit down with the prosecutors, and it's typically not the main guy. Like the guy I was arguing with, he's like, oh, you think Bill Johnson wrote that? I'm like, no, I think somebody in his office wrote it. That's who I think wrote it, or multiple people wrote it based on what Moscow was telling them. They had dug up his evidence. So they had sat there. Mm-hmm. The lawyers drafted out. They say, here, sign it. And then they go and get the warrant. Like, that's just how they work. They don't hold back bombshell evidence. It's like that concept is ridiculous. And I'm going to tell you why. There's two reasons why. It's very simple. One, because it is the narrative that the state gets to get out to the public, that the public is the only thing they see, and they stew on it for 2.5, 3 years. Everyone who thinks Richard Allen is guilty of this, everyone who's dug in, it's based on one thing. Well, now two things. But the first thing was the fact that there was this PCA with the state's theory, and that's all it is. The states, that is the only thing that the public has seen. Just a minute. Yeah. So the other thing, and the other thing is obviously now he has confessed. So now we have that thing, but that's addressed when we get to the other thing that we're going to talk about today. So like, I just need people to understand that they're not withholding bombshell evidence and PCAs because one, they're, sorry, my little daughter's calling me now.
Oh no, you're good.
So essentially you've got the PCA where it's laying out the state's case out in the public for years, and that's what the public is digesting. And the second thing is that they know the defense is going to be attacking these things. I am going to be trying to get a motion to quash the arrest. I'm going to say this is weak as water. This is bullshit. I'm going to be filing my motion. They know they're going to come under attack. They're going to put in all their best evidence in the front end. And the thing that people just don't get is that like people like have a misconception that when somebody's arrested, that the investigation is over. And it's the diametric opposite. That's literally when the real investigation starts.
Go to your point though about the probable cause. Like I argue it because of the fact that is when the investigation starts. So it isn't necessarily the evidence that the prosecutors have. So if you look at like for Richard Allen, for example, you have they give this probable cause affidavit, but then they also are serving this search warrant and they're getting all of these items that we don't know what the test results are because we're not getting another probable cause.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's like it isn't the probable cause isn't all of their evidence. It's their best evidence at the time of arrest.
Well, yeah. And beyond that, I mean, there's evidence that they have that just isn't relevant. I mean, you have to understand that the police investigation includes in a case like this, hundreds of witnesses that had nothing of any kind of relevance to the case at all. That all gets tendered to the defense. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? It's like they can look at certain witnesses saying one thing, as we're going to see when we get to the memo, and not think anything of it. I mean, the shit that they decided to completely ignore that we know is in the evidence is stunning. Yeah. But they chose to say, you know what? We're not buying it. You know what I'm saying? So they put in what they believe is their best evidence that they have collected. They don't hold back anything like any bombshell evidence, anything that they think is going to directly link that. They want that out in the public. They want the court of public opinion to convict them in their minds always. That is their number one goal. It's a huge advantage for the prosecution. So
ironic though.
Yeah, I mean,
everybody gets mad at the defense motions.
Yeah, right. Well,
are always hubbub and just bullshit.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time on my podcast explaining just exactly what it is that defense attorneys do. People like to champion prosecutors and the cops and all that stuff. They're the government. And if you know anything about this country and what the backbone of it is, it's the U.S. Constitution. And that document, my friends, was written to protect us, the citizens, from them.
Yeah.
That is literally a guidebook for them of the shit they can't do to us. So when people are getting pissed off at a defense attorney for filing a motion to suppress based on a Fourth Amendment violation of the law, don't be pissed at the defense attorney. Be pissed at the cop who broke the law. Because if I don't file that motion and say, okay, Mr. Officer, you violated his constitutional rights. You conducted an illegal search. The law is clear on what it is. If you had done your job right, if you had followed the law, we're not here today. Now, the teeth of that particular motion to suppress is you're losing your evidence, which means more likely than not, that guy's going to walk. You don't blame the defense attorney for doing his job and protecting all of us and all of our rights in the Fourth Amendment by filing that motion. You point your finger at the cop and say, do your shit right.
I fully agree.
We police the police, and we've all been consuming true crime shit for 20, 30 years since it became a thing. And all we ever see are cops and prosecutors on the shows. And they put on these defense attorneys and make them seem like slimy motherfuckers. Yep. So I spend a lot of time trying to explain to people, you got it all wrong. You got it all wrong. You need to look at it the way it really is. So, I'm trying, and I'm making a lot of headway. A lot of people that were like, man, I hated defense attorneys until I heard you explain it. And for that, I'm grateful that I'm able to actually change.
You're in good company here, I think. I'm very pro cop, but I'm also not blind. Once again, I can see. So I also know that not all cops do the right thing. And I believe that people cut corners. I think it's human nature that people want to cut corners because they want an easier path to their destination. Yeah. And that's just how it is. So.
Well, another thing I was going to say, too, that I find interesting about the probable cause affidavit with Richard Allen versus the probable cause affidavit that came out from the murder sheet with Ron Logan was they talk about the collected hair and fiber evidence in the Ron Logan affidavit. Where's that in Allen's? There's no bullet that's mentioned in Ron Logan's, but it is in Allen's.
Right.
So I'm confused.
I mean, you and me both. Hey, hold on. I gotta scream down to Allison to go pick up her.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
But I'm confused by that.
They're ready to go.
Okay.
So that's a great question because that was one of the things that we were talking about. And then, Sleuthy the other night had sent me that the document, the probable cause document for Richard Allen is the first time that they actually talk about guys down the hill.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. So I just pulled them all up just so we have them ready to go. Okay. I was saying while you were yelling at your wife there, Bob.
Yeah.
I was saying it's the fact that, or like Sluice was saying first, actually, they talk about the bullet or the ammunition, the unspent ammunition, because it's not necessarily a bullet. It's the whole thing. It's the casing. So
it's the casing. It did not fire through the barrel of the gun. The bullet did not leave the casing and fire through the barrel. It's an ejected bullet, like casing, a full casing. The whole thing came out.
The whole thing. So I think that we can talk about that too. But why, before we go there, why is the bullet talked about in Richard Allen's but not talked about in Ron Logan's after the crime, when they supposedly would have had this unspent casing? And then why is there's fibers and DNA talked about in Ron Logan's, but there's no results or any of that talked about in anything we've ever seen since? Not even just the PCA. We don't see it in the memorandum that there's these fibers and DNA. Who do they belong to? Do they not match? Do they match? Nobody talks about them. They're just non-existent now.
Yeah.
Animal hairs, that was a specific thing that they've looked at everywhere is for animal hairs.
And then if you watch the Down the Hill HLN episodes, Tobe Lesenby tells Barbara they have fingerprints. He says it. So I'm sitting there like, what? You have fingerprints, you have evidence, like hair and fiber evidence. You allegedly have this bullet that has no chain of custody. What is going on? Like, it's 2017, the case happens. It's now 2023.
Right.
This ain't mathin' for me. Like,
no, and that whole thing with why it didn't show up in Logan's thing is super curious, right?
Yeah.
It's like, do I think that Ron Logan probably owned a 40 caliber weapon? I almost guarantee it. It's one of the between a 9mm and a 40 caliber. I mean, they're the two most popular caliber weapons used in the United States. I mean, that's facts. I mean, in Indiana, like in Illinois, we've got a waiting period before you can go buy a gun. In Indiana, you get in your pickup, you drive to Walmart and you buy a gun. I mean, that's facts. Like I mean, it's
you don't have to wait.
There's no waiting. And you don't have to have a FOID card. There's no, like, here you have to have what they call a FOID card, which is it's a firearm identification card. And that's, I mean, you have to have it. If you don't have it, you get arrested. There, nothing. I mean, it's just a different mindset there. So, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but it sure makes me wonder, just like it makes all of us wonder, like where did this bullet come from? And when we get into the memo and Rozzy's talking about, okay, well, where is all the chain of custody, photography with respect to this bullet that was allegedly found in the ground between the girls? Like, why is there only one picture of it in the ground? Who's picking it up? Who has it, like, after it gets out of the ground? Where is it from here? I mean, chain of custody is everything. Chain of custody is what lets us know, as the attorneys, that they didn't plant shit.
Yeah.
They followed that it's by the book. That's how we know. We know exactly where a piece of evidence goes, step by step by step by step. And when there's a break in the chain, that's when some shit's gone awry. So it's like those kind of things with that particular. And I just want to tell you flat out, like, I was on Vinnie Politan the other night with this old New York, or maybe he's like Utah, super nice guy.
Profiling evil.
Yeah, exactly. And Vinny asked him, he says, he's like, all right. He's like, the unspent casing from a scale of 1 to 10, weak being 1, 10 being powerful. He says, it's a 10, and he goes through his shit. And I'm like, man, like, I'm not trying to like
my king too.
On national TV here, man. I'm really not. But I can just tell you, there's never been a case in this country where an unspent casing that's been ejected from a weapon has been used as the primary piece of evidence to convict somebody, especially in a capital murder case. It doesn't exist. And like, he didn't say anything. And I was at CrimeCon. Like, I had like landed that night and like in panic.
He was at CrimeCon too.
He was. So he comes up to my table the next day and he's like, man, he's like, Bob, he's like, I have to tell you, I was so pissed. I was so fucking pissed at you that you like outed me like that. But then he's like, but then I did the research and you were right. You were 100% right. And like, he super sweet guy. Like, we actually got, hugged it out. And I'm like, man, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to, I'm like, I'm a just facts type of guy. I'm not going to sit here if I know you're saying some shit that's wrong and let you tell the whole country, whoever's watching Vinnie Politan, the wrong shit. It's not my game. You know what I mean? So he was a great guy, man. And like, we really hit it off. And like, he's like, I want you to read the book. And he's like, I want you to have me on your podcast. So I think he actually respected the fact. Because, I wasn't trying to make it like, oh, you're an idiot. You know what I mean? I was like, I have to respectfully disagree. I can just tell you factually, I know, because I've researched it. There's never been a case where, because ballistics themselves, what used to be called ballistics, which they now call tool markings and stridations, that is like, it's not recognized as like actual science anymore that they're going to convict people on. And the main reason, and I dug into this with people that know far more about guns than I do. And I'm like,
and I'm not a gun person, so I don't know
either. I've never owned one in my entire. I'm a pacifist. I don't know what to tell you. I've never owned a weapon, but I have a lot of friends that have and do. And I was asking a buddy who's a longtime Marine, who knows a shit ton. Actually, his buddy testified for us on Garcia because the guy knows everything about guns. And I'm like, what is the difference? He's like, well, back in the day when ballistics actually used to mean something, it was because they were all made by hand. Every barrel was made by hand. Now it's all uniform. It's all machine pressed. Every barrel looks the exact same. Does that mean that you can't ever get a defect in there? Of course. But for the most part, every barrel is going to look the same. When the bullets come out, it's just different. When you were talking about handmade barrels back when they used to make guns the old fashioned way, every barrel was going to be different. Like where, they say, well, it's like a fingerprint, like you're going to be able to match. You're going to fire the bullets through. It's not the case anymore. And so now, just like bite mark analysis, just like hair comparisons, that's going the way of the dodo, and I mean, new technology comes about, as we all know, like DNA is the thing. And now we have the IgG stuff, which is next level, which terrifies me. That's a whole different episode. If you guys ever want to have a really, really interesting conversation about IgG, which is an amazingly powerful tool. Amazing. Like there's no part of me. Yeah, there's no part of me that's saying don't use it. What I'm saying is you have to have a warrant to get it. You can't, you have to have some more probable Nah, trust me, you don't want that. Because
not yet you don't. What I'm saying is currently you don't. There needs to be a lot of
that's what I'm saying. That's my point.
No, I agree. No, I thought you were saying now you don't need any of that.
No, you don't need
very
nothing.
Unregulated.
Not only that,
have some laws behind it, but it is, and it's a great tool. I'm all for it. That's one of the things that I studied.
But just use it right. When you have a tool like that at the disposal of law enforcement, they're going to abuse it. That's just a fact. It's like, it's too tempting to have right in front of you where you're like, oh man, we could probably crack this thing right the fuck now if we just boop, we're just going to make a fake profile and get into Ancestry, whatever avenue they're going to take, and just slip in through the back door.
It's the same thing.
And the thing is like the bigger argument though, like that I keep having with my prosecutor buddies, especially Brett Talley, who I and he's got the prosecutor pod, and we're like yin and yang. I don't give a shit what anybody. I love those guys, and they've been nothing but gracious to me. I'm huge fans of theirs, and they're very close friends. But we disagree on a lot of shit, and like that IgG thing, because right now they don't have standing. Like we have no argument to say that I have a privacy interest. And I know I'm getting a little far afield, but it's such a
it's my favorite field. So we
will spend hours on that because that standing.
We're gonna have to talk about that too.
It's a fascinating subject matter because in order for you to say for instance, I murdered somebody and then I went to my buddy's house afterwards and I'm like, oh my God, he's not going to know, but I'm going to stash this. I'm going to stash the murder weapon here under this dude's couch. And then the cops are doing what they do. They're talking, they do their concentric circles, working their way out from the people they suspect. So they're going to go all the people that they know are closest to me. So they make it to my best friend's crib and they search his house now and they find my murder weapon. I have no my lawyer. I can't say, oh, they didn't even have they wouldn't search his house and they didn't have a warrant. That's bullshit. We're getting that shit. I'm walking. No, I have no standing. I had no privacy interest in his house. Right. The only person that can in any way, shape, or form, if he gets arrested and they think that he's the killer because I left the knife at his house, that's a different thing. He can challenge the warrant saying they violated, they did a warrantless search. For me, if it's my DNA on it, I'm done. My goose is cooked. So that's what they call standing. So where it gets interesting with the DNA and the IgG stuff is that I have a strand called the YSTR strand or the STR strand that is the same throughout my entire familial line, all the 1,000 years back. If you were to look at the great grandfather, he would share that one, and they would be able to link us by that one. My argument is that we do have a privacy interest in that strand because there's been nothing else like it. We don't share That is private. There's nothing more intensely private than our DNA. They can tell diseases we have. It's like it is the actual like coding for us as human beings, like individually. So it's like there's an argument, and it's going to be made that like what the first case, and I think it's probably going to be Idaho 4. I think ultimately that issue with this whole IGG thing, it's going to make its way up, I think, on that case of the Supreme Court, and it needs to, because what we were talking about, it's got to get heard. We've just never had the technology before. You know what I mean? It's a fascinating area. It really is. Like if you're a law nerd, follow that, because it's like it really is fascinating, and it's going to affect all of us, because these databases, believe me, these are going to grow by leaps and bounds. They're going to start collecting the dude. Well, it used to be law enforcement they had CODIS, and they could either get it from like in some, and it's state by state. So some states you have to have a conviction before they can extract your DNA, get a sample,
just an arrest,
and put it into CODIS. Some states are just arrested, and also they bring it in from crime scenes. So if they pull swabs from crime scenes, they will enter that into the system as well. So they have two different ways to get source material. Like if they have somebody who's like, all right, this guy might be the offender, they take a swab, they run it in CODIS, and they get a hit either from, he's already in the system, or he left DNA somewhere else at a crime scene, and then they get a hit there. And that's typically on an unsolved case. So, but now, and it's not even like where you're not even taking the privacy rights. You're talking about people that are like, because you can elect to say, all right, I'm going to allow if you do Ancestry or 23andMe, you can elect to have it, used by law enforcement. You can let them access it. It's like,
not those two sites though.
Well, not those. Well, not yet. Not yet, but
I don't know. Those are privately owned. And those guys are pretty adamant against law enforcement. But like you said earlier, you can create the fake profile and you upload it, and there's nobody fact checking that you are who you are. You as a cop goes, okay, I'm going to go ahead and take this DNA and I'm going to put it in as Joe, Rogan.
Yeah, and you're giving way too much credit for private corporations being able to stave off the government. I know.
I agree.
I know what the position is now. I'm just saying. I don't know if you remember the Apple battle with the government, where they were just refusing to like crack the phone. I can't remember the exact case, but they're like, no, we're not doing it. Like we're you know what I mean? It's like when the government starts pressing it, but they're just going to start pulling DNA off of everything. And like as touch DNA started to develop and it becomes so easy for them to pull samples, they're just going to start building their own database to where they're not going to need private databases.
So that was the point that I always had, was people are upset about the privacy of this DNA. But if you're that upset about the privacy of your DNA, when you leave your house, don't touch anything, because they can go get your DNA anywhere you go. Everywhere.
Like wear a hazmat suit.
Take away the database. I'll just go follow you around. I'm going to get your DNA.
Exactly. As soon as you eat at a restaurant, I want to pick up. Even beyond that, you put your hand on a table. They take a swab, you're done. It's like, yeah. So that whole thing is like a fascinating thing. But I digress. We got like,
I know we're gonna have to totally do that.
I love that subject matter though.
I do want to segue real quick though, and just say that you eat your pizza crust, everybody, or you're done. Okay.
And Howard Stern called that shit.
All right. Listen, somebody is telling me that that's a deep fake, because my mind exploded. That's what I had like 5 or 10 people, because I actually posted on Twitter, because my buddy from Publicly Buzzed.
I like Publicly Buzzed.
I did too.
He's like, I'm not like screaming. He's like, he nailed every single thing. And I listened, I'm like, holy shit. I'm like,
did somebody freaking create that with like AI?
Yes, that's what.
Oh man!
See,
we believed it.
Somebody check Snopes and see if that's legit.
Yeah, so because I want to know, because I was so disappointed to know that it was like AI, because I have a whole thing with AI that we don't want to. But that would be another excellent episode where we could talk about it. My just crippling fear that it's going to kill us all probably in the next 10 years unless we do something.
Oh yeah, I'm terrified.
Not in disagreement. Like I'm terrified
of it.
One of the papers I had to write you don't know a lot about my history, but so I was a retail manager for 20 plus years, and I actually quit and went back to school to finish my criminal justice degree with a specialty in forensics, IGG. And so one of the papers I had to write was on AI, and I've never been so petrified of anything in my life.
Oh my God.
Scary.
Well, all my buddies, the dude, Jay that I was talking about, the Shamey, like they're all making fun of me. They're like, oh, it's Bob Bot, like he's AI. And I'm like, look, all I can tell you is there was the open letter that was written by the 1,400 leading tech people in the planet. And that was published in Time, which is, as far as like mainstream media, it's got a semblance of credibility, like when none of it has any. But the letter that got me was the guy who's basically the godfather of AI. And he's like, I couldn't join in on that particular open letter because a 6-month pause on AI isn't going to do a fucking thing. He's like, if we don't stop it, like, everyone should go just Google, Time Magazine, the letter. I started sending it to all my friends. I was like weeping, like worrying about I was like, oh my God, like this guy is flat out. He's the guy who sits on the board. Like his credentials in terms of what he's talking about and knowing what he's talking about in relation to AI is unimpeachable. Like he is the authority, and he is saying if we don't stop it, we are all dead.
See, I can't watch that. That's going to give me an anxiety. I'm going to have like a panic attack.
It was horrible. I was weeping.
Why are you trying to force it on everybody else?
And I'm like, all right, everybody
everywhere. Go watch it.
Yeah. This milk's rotten tasting.
Yeah, it tastes so good. Yeah, hell no.
Right.
All right, Sluice, take it away. Go back to Delphi.
All right,
Okay.
let's go.
You already
We're
have your
doing it.
questions ready. Go ahead. What do you want me to pull up?
Okay, so mine was really the probable cause affidavit and how it was vastly different. They claim in the Ron Logan PCA that they have hair and fiber evidence. They don't say it in Allen's. They don't say the bullet in Ron Logan's, but they do in Allen's. And then the other thing was Tobles and B said on Down the Hill podcast, which you see on HLN, that they have fingerprints.
Mm-hmm.
Whose?
Right.
Whose fingerprints?
Well, you know who we knows that are not like they're not Richard Allen's.
No.
Because that would have been
that now.
probable cause affidavit.
Thank you. Because that HLN, when did that come out? Like, when did that come out?
Man,
I think it's like episode 10.
Yeah.
So it's been out for a long time, like a
Yeah.
very long
Years.
time. Yes.
And I'm just going to tell you right now, like Barbara McDonald, who she hosted that.
Mhm.
I adore
She's
her.
amazing. Yeah.
She is amazing. And so her and I happened to be at CrimeCon, and I'm like, okay, well, you just read that shit. I'm like, what do you think?
Right before you were at CrimeCon, yeah.
Right. I mean, I told her flat out, I'm like, man, I just have to tell you, like, I don't think Richard Allen is. I think they have the wrong man in prison. Yeah, in prison, because he should be in jail awaiting trial, but he's in prison awaiting trial. And I'm terrified that the girls aren't going to get justice. I mean, I don't know what the fuck is happening here. It's like they had this guy's statement for 5 years that got buried. And they're like, but like, we'll get there. So I don't know. Man. I don't know. What I've heard is that they didn't take any of the sticks.
I heard that too.
They took swabs off of it. That's how they were able to find out that it was Abby's blood. But they didn't take the bark. They left all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they went back weeks later to try to find it. Like they're going to be able to figure out what fucking stick is which.
Jay, I was on a stream with Jay last night, and he had Karen Smith, like fucking amazing woman.
Oh, she's funny.
She's hilarious, and she's brilliant. She's like just great cop. She lost her fucking shit when I told her. She's like, what? She's like, she's like, I want to tell you a story about a leaf. I picked up a leaf one time, and I took this motherfucker back, and we found a drop of blood. You know whose blood it was? It wasn't the victim. I mean, she was like beside herself, and I'm like, oh man. I'm like, I know. I'm like, I don't know how they did that. So it's beyond me, and all this shit's gonna come out. I mean, all of it's coming out. And it's like we were talking about, Teresa, before we came on. It's like, strip away the Odinism shit.
Yeah.
Forget about that for a minute. Let's get down to the brass tacks. Let's talk about what is in this memo. And there's a lot there. And it all comes from the state's discovery. This isn't some shit the defense is making up. It's shit that was tendered to them by the very people that have Richard Allen in a prison right now awaiting trial. It's to me, it's mind-blowing, and to me, it's terrifying on like so many levels, because it's like, what if you ask me what I think's going to happen? I think that Gull is going to be furious that they filed that thing not under seal. I think that she's going to take exception to that fact. I think, and look, I'm a defense attorney. There's without question, 100%, they were laying their theory. Just look at that memo is the defense's PCA, because that's what the fuck it is. They laid out their case just like the state gets to lay out their case. In their estimation, they leveled the playing field. That's what they did, and they took a huge risk doing it. The problem is that the heart of that memo is a Franks hearing. That's what they're asking for. And I'm worried, and I'm sure you've gone through it with your folks, but like kind of the way to like explain it to lay people like a real simplistic way is, if law enforcement either recklessly or intentionally lies, or they make omissions such as all the other shit that we now know exists, in order to go in front of a judge to secure the warrant, and the judge says, okay, here's what's going to happen. I find that you did lie. I find that we have these two witnesses. I've seen the police statements. I see what they said in these statements. It's beyond me, Tony Liggett, how the fuck you decided to come in front of a judge when you knew these reports existed and you knew you were going to get called out, unless you were just hoping they were going to get missed, that they were buried in this like giant, their needle in the haystack theory. But like the fact that you took that risk, I'm finding that you did lie. Now I'm going to take out those statements. I'm going to remove those witnesses from your PCA. Does it still have enough probable cause to stand on its own 2 feet? What I worry about is that Gull is going to say yes, because she's furious that they filed this shit with not under seal. Like that is what my concern is. I think that because that's left to the judge's discretion. She pulls out the putrid stuff, the rotten fruit, so to speak, and what's left in the thing is that enough? And if she finds that it is, that's it. It survives.
Okay, so we're talking about mere presence before, and if you take out the witness statements, you have his own statement that is also an issue, because his statement that is actually documented and recorded says that he's there from 12:30 to 1:30, while the one from Dan Doolin back, in 2017 says he's there between 1:30 and 3:30.
Right.
So, but there's no documentation to back that up besides Dan Doolin's notes.
Right.
So now you're back to mere presence and not even around that time. So
how do you preaching to the choir? I mean, you really are. It's like, I don't, like I said, I didn't think there was enough probable cause for them to get the arrest warrant.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So take out the witness statements. What is really left?
Nothing. Yeah. Mere presence.
Right.
By and I always take exception to people using the word he admitted it. No, he volunteered the information. He gave a voluntary statement. There's a big difference between somebody going to law enforcement and volunteering that they were somewhere when there's a call for it, when everyone is saying, hey, if you're out at the bridge, we need to know. We need to try to figure out who knows what, who saw what. So please, if you were out there, let us know. He did that. Okay, there's a big difference between that.
He tells him exactly what he's flipping wearing. Right. When he doesn't know that he doesn't know he was recorded. So now they're like, okay, give us all your clothes you were wearing, and he already had. Now they.
But beyond that, he saw three people on the bridge, because the counter argument is, okay, no, he was trying to get ahead of it. He's trying to get in front of it. He knew that 3 girls had seen him. Now we know the big discrepancy. There are 4 girls, 3 girls. They added a girl. or those are just completely different girls, which is the more likely scenario. You know, but like, we've got this situation where that argument has to be he was trying to get ahead of it. Bullshit. There's no way. I've been doing this for 20 plus years. I've dealt with sociopaths. Look, do serial killers and murderers, do they sometimes go to the funeral? Yes. Do they sometimes creep around the crime scene? Yes. Do they go to the police and put themselves at the scene? No, they don't.
Wearing the outfit
No, they don't.
actually wore.
No,
Wearing the outfit that they actually wore while they killed 2 young girls. Like,
They
that's
don't
the
do it.
crazy part to me,
They
because
don't do
nobody can verify that I was wearing that outfit. So why wouldn't I say I was wearing shorts and a long sleeve t-shirt? I'm not only going to volunteer that I was there, I'm also going to volunteer that I'm wearing the exact clothes that the murderer was wearing that I don't even know he was wearing.
Right. It's just, to me, it's implausible. Like, it's always been implausible. So, you know, I'm like, I just like pre-memo. I never liked him. When I first laid eyes on his 5 foot, or like, the guy's 5'4".
Yeah.
Like when they walked him in from the back, I was with my old PI, Kurt, and I'm like, he's like a fucking Lilliputian. I mean, look at him. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe how little he was. And the second time in June, when he had lost all the weight, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I could throw him like a little football. He's like, he's skinny. Like, and I was stunned because
He's tiny.
he really is. Like, when you see him with your own 2 eyes, it's stunning. It's like, Libby would have beat that dude's ass. Like, she would have picked up a stick and clubbed him like John Goodman did in like Oh Brother, when he just crushes George Clooney in the head with that big trail. Like, I mean, there's no, I don't know.
There's also, they say there's no defensive wounds or anything on the girls either. That there was no fight. So that's also interesting.
No blood. Where'd the blood go?
Oh, see, that's a whole nother. Yeah, see, we're going to be here forever. I'm going to have to answer your questions so you can actually go on with your life. Because I'm telling you, I can do this for hours and hours because I have so many questions that it doesn't make sense. So here's one thing I want to ask you. And I want to make sure that I do get to ask, but I got to find my document now because now I'm down like 5 other rabbit holes. Okay, so in the search warrant, let me pull this back up so I can actually show you. In the search warrant, they talk about the girls, the witness girls. So I have so many questions around this too. So you have Betsy Blair, who saw him on the bridge. And then you have Sarah Carbaugh, who supposedly saw him on 300 North.
Right.
They both go in and give a sketch, or they go and talk to a sketch artist who creates a sketch based on their eyewitness testimony. Yep. Now, the other girls, the group of 3-4 girls, they don't give a sketch. They don't even ask them to do it, which is also weird. The 2 girls meet with 2 different sketch artists, one from like Detroit. It's odd. So my first question when it comes to that is, why do they have a sketch of a suspect on February 17th that they do not put out?
I don't know. Because, well, I mean, I think the easy answer is that it didn't look enough like Bridge Guy. I mean, because we know that dropped on the 15th, right? I mean, so like the girls go missing, 2 days pass, and they release the video, you know, so they've got that there. And like, they have to be like, and we now know that there were 2 groups of girls, in my estimation. There was a group of 4 girls who I think are an entirely different group than the 3 girls. I don't think there was a miscount there. Look, I mean, it was a snow day that never happened, so the kids all had off school. Like, people that don't understand like what like the bridge and, you know, the trail is, it's where people congregate. Like,
people don't even know what a snow day is, Bob.
Right. So like
some of these California
like here in the Midwest, or like in areas where you live where it snows, you know, they build in snow days. And as the year progresses, when you get into spring, if they didn't use those, they say, all right, we're going to give you all the day off. We never had to use a snow day, but we built it into the calendar. Here you go. So that was one of those days. So all the kids were off of school. There were a lot of people out there that day. I mean, I've seen varying numbers, but I think that there was, for real.
BG's
I mean, wait, you just figured that out, BG? Come on. I know. Dude. Yeah. So
probably get a lot of attention right now.
yeah, exactly. I mean, the Fed's going to be knocking on your door any minute. So look,
You get a search warrant.
There's everybody's getting a search warrant. So
Everybody gets a
it's
search
just
warrant.
one of those things where you're like, all right, it doesn't add up, like in just so many different ways, you know, and like I don't know, like the whole sketch, the two sketch thing is beyond contemplation anyway. It's like
Right.
it's like a complete, like those two people look nothing alike. Not like
No,
no.
so they wait a few months and then they have Sarah come in and do another sketch. And then they decide to put that sketch out, not even like a few weeks later. But I don't understand why they even had her come in and do a sketch if they had the sketch that was already sitting there. Right, it's like they didn't like the look of this person. So they were, or like they didn't think that he didn't match their guy. And in my opinion, I think at the time their guy was Ron Logan, and he didn't look like Ron Logan. Right. Because they had over 15 tips saying that it was Ron Logan. They had 2 of Ron Logan's exes talking about that he was abusive to them. They had Ron Logan's friends saying how he, had forced them to lie about the time that he was at the aquarium. And I think that the first sketch didn't look like Ron Logan. Right. So they didn't use it.
Plus it's on his property.
I mean, his phone's being there.
I mean, let's not forget about the fact that they were killed on his property. You know, I don't know. Yeah, I mean.
So they released this second sketch months later, and then obviously we all know what happens is they wait a couple of years, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, sorry everybody, we're going to actually give you the very first sketch that we did, that was done by Betsy Blair, who says that it was actually like a 20-year-old guy, and we want you to basically put the first sketch that we put out on the back burner. We don't want you really looking at it. And we're adamant that these are 2 different people." And so there's this piece that is huge too, because they say they are not the same person. This is in their release. They are not the same person. The depicted in the originally released sketch is not presently a person of interest in this investigation. So the first sketch released, no longer a person of interest. This is where I get the sketch released on April 22nd is the face of the person that was captured on Liberty German's cell phone. Now, here's my issue. You go to the search warrant and Liggett puts in the search warrant, even though he's not typing it. He's the one that's essentially supposed to be saying, hey,
he's the affiant.
Yes.
Right.
So he says that she noted a vehicle, blah, 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 blah. So wait. Maybe I am on the wrong page. Hold on. I think I zoomed in and lost where I was at. Here. Betsy Blair was shown a picture of the individual on the Monon High Bridge, and she says that is the same individual that she witnessed on the trails and on the bridge. So she says, yes, that's the guy that's in the picture on Libby's phone. Now, Sarah Carbaugh, who we know they're saying these are 2 different sketches, observes a man walking down 300 North with a blue jacket, which supposedly is tan, not blue, and jeans, and is muddy and bloody, which is supposedly just muddy, not bloody. And looks like he was in a fight. She's shown a picture of the man on the bridge and says that is the same man she observed. So how are both men the ones that they observed the same man, but they're saying that the sketches are 2 different people, and they're adamant, don't use the first sketch anymore. He's not a person of interest.
Right. Well, I mean, it absolutely solidifies what any attorney will ever tell you about eyewitnesses. And eyewitnesses are just completely unreliable. And it goes back to that thing that I was talking about 25 minutes ago about walking on a fucking trestle. You're not like, you have to be looking at your feet. You have to be, you're not wandering around with your eyes trained on other people when you don't have any reason to have your eyes trained on them. And, it's like, they're completely unreliable in circumstances where you're not walking on a train trestle over a river. I mean, just in general, like eyewitness testimony is inherently unreliable for tons and tons of reasons. If there's a shooting involved, you're not fucking looking who's shooting at you. You're ducking.
You're getting out of
period. You're not. Well, now you're trying to not get your face blown off, so you're ducking.
Let me get a better look at you, honey.
Right. Like there's just a lot of reasons that it's like, and it's again, like there's so many things that we don't know about the human mind and perception that just you can't.
Bob, but people like direct evidence, and eyewitnesses are direct evidence.
Yeah,
People want circumstantial. They want direct.
I keep trying to tell people, I'm like, man, because there's this misnomer that circumstantial evidence is weak, and I'm like, no, it's not.
I know.
Like 90% of cases are tried on circumstantial evidence. It's typically pretty powerful. It just is. And
you have a group of 3 girls who all saw the same guy together and all said he was wearing something different.
Totally. All different.
Yeah.
It's like like the perception is in the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and it goes like that stretches all the way to what somebody looks like in somebody's own mind, what they're wearing. If you're not aware at the time that you need to be remembering something, you're going to do the best that you can to try to recollect what somebody looked like and what they were wearing. But I mean, just go play the old memory game like we did when we were 8 years old. Put fucking 10, 20 cards in and see how much you can remember from like second to second.
Yeah. No.
Now drag it out for a full day or days or a week, whatever.
Now years.
Boom.
Some of those witnesses weren't talked to until 2020, 2021.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's just not reliable. So, and it goes back to our point that, look, at the end of the day, Judge Gull is going to be sitting there when she strips away all the bullshit in the memo, which is super compelling. And she's just getting down to brass tacks, because you have to go to page 105 of that thing to get to the Frank's hearing stuff. And I get why they felt compelled. Especially, I think the first 100 pages were setting up the entire explanation of why he confessed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, footnote 15, I don't love the way that they decided to draft that up, because it's deceiving the way it reads, and when we get to that, where, they put in quotes that these guys told me that they're going to kill my wife and my family.
He didn't actually say that.
Right. He doesn't actually say that, but the way that they draft it is it reads that way. And if you don't see footnote 15, because what they had after it, what he did actually say, where he's mumbling, is my wife alive? Is my family okay? Yeah. Is my wife alive? Is my family okay? He did actually say that. You don't have to take a massive logical leap to get to why he's asking that. When you see these two clowns,
and you don't need to footnote it either.
You don't need to footnote it. Like I like, as much as I like loved it from the defense side that they put it out there, I also see huge pratfalls in it in terms of some of the decisions they made. And I was trying to explain it the other night. It's like when Allison and I have drafted things where we're taking like a chance, we're like, and like you're sitting there, and this got filed at 2 a.m., and I'm like, I can't remember if I was on Jay's stream. I'm like, but they're sitting there thinking like, fuck, do we file it? Oh my God. Oh, I'm gonna press the button. And then it's out there. Once it's out in the world.
Like after a couple beers, they're like, all right, just do it. Just hit the button. And then the next morning they're like, shit.
Oh my God, I can't believe we did it. It's like, but man, it's an incredible document. I understand why people are upset, like going into the details of how Alan couldn't have been like a sole perpetrator and how it would have been impossible, and just like kind of wringing the pathos out of,
I didn't like that part. And I also didn't find anything in there that, as we went through it, because we went through it point by point, and I'm like, I could do that by myself. I could do that by myself. I could do that by myself. Like, it was unnecessary. And then they purposely got a little gruesome in there that I was like, you're actually losing your audience. Your audience by doing that. I
agree completely. And it was so early on, and it's like, there's two camps. There's those who have read and those who have not. And I have a real problem with discussing this with anybody who has not read it. And, like I was on Vinny the other night. No, was it Vinny or was it Surviving the Survivor? Whatever it was. It was, they had, I think it was Surviving the Survivor, and they had,
he had the cult guy on there.
Yeah. I forget what his name is.
Wasn't his name like Richard Allen?
I think his name was like Rick.
Yeah, it was like Rick Allen. It was like
Rick Allen King, I think his name was. All right.
That's
All right,
interesting.
real quick and then out. All right, because this is serious business. You have this is my daughter Scarlett. She always likes
That's okay. I have tiny humans that like to pop in. Hi.
She likes to do a cameo. Like people that watch me on streams know her.
Here, hold on.
Huh?
There's new comments.
I like to scroll through. All right, go. I gotta talk. No one's commenting about you, dude.
Hold on, they're all gonna comment. You just got to give them a second because they'll all comment. Every time my tiny human
I
comes in,
know.
they all comment. That's just
Teresa,
how.
try not to encourage her.
Hey, she's like a future star. Do you not see her face?
She's my ace, man. I love her to death. And she's been on the pod. So like I did a great Christmas episode where she got to see.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she's
StreamYard is just behind the actual YouTube chat. So you have to give it a second to get all the compliments in here. Hi, cutie.
All right, they're flowing in. All right, so yeah, I mean, as far as
I like it,
you know where it's at right now with that thing, I could not agree more. I read it and I'm like, why did they put that shit in there? You know, I mean, it's completely superfluous. And I agree. I think they probably lost a ton of people there. You know,
they stopped reading.
They really did. You know, and it's like you've got like the people that are like, all right, well, you know, like as soon as they're talking about Vikings killing them, I'm like, I'm over it. You know, I don't want to hear about it. You know, Vikings, you get, you know. I'm like I was like, oh man, this is amazing. I love the Viking show. I'm like,
I was so interested in this read. It was a very, I mean, it read pretty easy. There was a few typos.
Yeah.
And besides that middle, like the part we were just talking about that got a little, I was like, okay, that wasn't necessary. There was no need for that. I understood their point. So, but I did not see, and at the end of reading the document, I told my audience to like, I don't see that the Odinism is, or even if there was potential runes or potential symbols, that actually changes the search warrant for Richard Allen. It just doesn't.
If I could talk right, exactly. It doesn't. It has nothing to do with the Franks at all.
Right.
You know, zero. Like that's what I'm saying. Like you literally don't get to the Franks hearing. And for the record, I called like when they dragged, because we all saw the motion to suppress first. And just so like I want to be clear, because I never like to assume that anybody like knows definitively or they may have a misunderstanding. This is an attack on the warrant for the search of Richard Allen's home, which preceded the probable cause affidavit for the arrest. Two entirely separate documents. I just need you guys to understand that. And when you're talking about, you know, the PCA, obviously that was bulked up by the search of Richard Allen's home. So everything.
Here's the search warrant, and then here's the probable cause. Two different ones.
Exactly. So you know, just understand that they're attacking the search on Allen's home, which predated his. I don't think you can do that on here. It predated the PCA. Obviously, they went in and did the search. So what they're trying to do is suppress everything that they found in that search. Okay, which, you know, to me, again, what kind of lunatic like brutally murders two girls and then keeps all his shit for 5 years? Like seriously. Like I had some guys like, oh, they're trophies. I'm like, that's not how trophies work.
That's not a trophy.
That's
like not how trophies work.
That's something from the victim. They don't keep their own shit. That's not a trophy. Well, you know, he remembers he was wearing it when he killed him. That's a trophy.
Not a trophy.
Not a trophy.
Not a trophy.
So, yeah, I don't know. It's like I'm so ready for that. Like, so what we're waiting for now, for them to set the hearing date. Like this thing, like. I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but this thing's never going to trial in January. There's no way. There's so much to do. There's no way.
Now there's even more.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is like everybody who's like losing their mind over Idaho 4 and there's been nothing substantive filed. I mean, technically it's all substantive. If you're asking the judge to do something they consider it to be in the eyes of the law, it's a substantive filing. But in terms of Idaho 4, there's been nothing like any suppression motions filed at that point at all. You know, I mean, there's been nothing that like is going to blow your mind, but that's all coming. Like there was no way they were going to be able to go to trial in October on that thing. There's no way, you know, and it's,
I didn't think they would until it was getting really close. And then, and nobody was stopping it. And I was like, It was almost like what kind of races are those where like they just go until one goes off the cliff? And I was like, this is kind of where we're at. Nobody is putting the brakes on, and we're just going.
Yeah, so you
there you go. Right. I'm like, we're done. I guess they're just going to trial in October because I never thought it was going to happen. Yeah, but they waited to the last minute to pull that one out. So
yeah, they really. And I mean, they could have waited even longer. You know what I mean? They really could have, because
they only had like a week left. I think that the judge gave them to make the decision. He was like, once you pass this date, you're done.
I think they had the October. Well, they had the October 14th date for they had to get the alibi. Like the judge is like, look, that alibi is insufficient. Whatever you just said, I need more. Like that's I don't constitute that as an alibi. I understood Ann Taylor's argument in terms of like, look, you're asking me for something I might not be able to give you until I get one of these people on the stand that happens to be a witness. You know, I mean, that is where we're assuming that our alibi is going to come from, you know, so I get what she's saying. And look, I mean, Ann Taylor's doing a great job on that case. I mean, when you look at she is, man. I mean, she's a hell of a lawyer.
I still think that we're going down the right path, though. I think they're going to trial with the right person, in my opinion.
I agree. You know, I mean, there's certainly warts, like you know, and there's a lot of things that you could pick apart with those PCA in that case. But at the end of the day, you know, I feel like on that one, it leans guilty, you know, like, whereas with Richard Allen, I feel in my heart and my gut that they have the wrong guy, you know, like I cannot say that honestly in Koberger's case. I just can't. Like, I understand all the arguments. I understand all the shit that people are putting out there, and there's substance to some of it, you know, I mean, there is, you know, but at the end of the day, they're going to be able to put that guy in the area. They're going to be able to like people are kind of like, you know, people want to make the arguments about touch DNA and how easily it's transferred. And that's all true. And the fact of the matter is we don't know the strength of the profile at all. I don't know if it's a full, if it's a partial. All we know is that they're saying it's a single source. That's it. I don't know. Like, if I hire my expert, Carl Reich, who's a genius, who I hired on Garcia and who Zellner's using on Avery, the guy's unbelievable. And what makes him a genius is not just his understanding of the science, but his genius is that he can make lay people understand DNA. That's what his genius is. That's why he's my favorite expert witness that I've ever hired, ever, because the man is just brilliant. And like in Garcia,
expert witness can win or lose your case because the jury might not understand what they're even talking about.
That's what I'm saying. 100%. And I mean, is a general proposition, your experts X each other out because everyone has a clear understanding that, look, it's a hired gun as far as the defense is concerned. And you know, the state's witness is going to say whatever the hell the state needs them to say, period. Yep. Like, you're never going to file, like, you're never getting an expert witness to crack on the stand, and it bugs the shit out of people. You know what I mean? Like, when you're watching these trials and like somebody asks a pointed question that really should score a point, that expert loses all credibility when they refuse to move an inch. You know what I'm saying? When it's clear they're giving a wrong answer and they're not being honest, they then lose credibility. So these experts X each other out. And at that point, you're left
with. If you have one that somebody likes, it really comes down to that. I understood how they were speaking. I understood what they were saying, and not to go off onto too many tangents onto other cases, because I'll do that too. I have to go back and ask you a question about the identification from these witnesses. Yeah. When these two witnesses draw this sketch or have their sketch drawn, and they're shown a picture of Bridge Guy from Libby's phone, would you typically show a witness a picture from like you think that's the perp? Would that be the comparison, or would you actually do some type of like lineup? Or
no, I would do like what you want from a composite sketch is them being shown nothing, because they're
shown it later, right?
Well, I don't know.
We don't know that actually.
I don't know when they were shown anything. Yeah, I have no idea. But what I'm saying is, like, that's what happened with Stephen Avery on the case that he was convicted of. You know, they showed the composite sketch artist a picture of Steve Avery. Like that is literally what they did, you know, and
I almost feel like that's kind of what happened on the second one is like they showed him a picture of Ron Logan.
That's what I'm suggesting. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's like, it's so, yeah, I don't know.
But
like,
why isn't there anything showing that these witnesses were shown a picture of like a 6-pack with Richard Allen in it and identifying him?
That's good stuff. I don't see. I missed the question because Scarlett. Are you?
That's okay.
I love
You know what? I'm a mom of 3.
Yeah,
So
I got 4 of them, and I love all of them. But like, I want to.
They're my favorite humans, but they're tiny and they get, they just.
She's amazing.
They're like an invasive species.
But they are, and I can't hear 2 things at one time. It's not my skill set.
Oh my God, it's so. Gosh, I knew I liked you. I'm the same way. Now I can't even remember what the damn question was.
I know.
Oh yeah, I do. Why wouldn't these witnesses, once they arrest Richard Allen, why wouldn't the witnesses be shown like a 6-pack with Richard Allen in it to say, hey, yeah, that is absolutely the guy? But
you're always it's same shit. It's like when I had the identical situation in Anthony Garcia's case, which I cover in season 2 of my podcast. The same thing. There were 5 to 6 eyewitnesses that saw this guy walking around the neighborhood the day that the young Thomas Hunter, 11-year-old kid, and the housekeeper are killed, brutally murdered, stabbed to death. So all of them had varying degrees of angles and looks at this guy. Scout is like about Richard Allen's height. Yeah. So, so it's like they put together a composite. All right. And like they would bring the composite back, and like some of the people, well, like, it kind of looks like him. Like it vaguely resembles him. His nose was wider, his face was rounder. There were certain things, but they're like, it's ballpark. So then when Garcia gets arrested, they then go to everybody with the 6-pack, with Garcia in there, along with 3 other guys that were at some point during the investigation people they looked really hard at. And not one of the witnesses, the eyewitnesses, identified Anthony Garcia. And then when they came on the stand, I then cross-examined them, knowing I had their 6-packs. I had, because it's not just, they fill out a sheet. Like not only were they not identifying Anthony Garcia, they were identifying other people. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I had that. The easy answer is the composite just didn't really look like what the guy looked like. That's the easiest answer. And the guy that they saw doesn't look like Richard Allen.
Right.
That's the easiest answer. That common sense, Occam's razor. That's why they're not identifying him, because that's not the guy they saw. At least.
Well, how easy is that going to be though? You put Betsy Blair on the stand and it's like, do you see the person that you saw walking on the bridge that day in the courtroom? And they're like, Richard Allen, this guy over here. And she's like, no, I saw a 20-year-old dude with fluffy brown curly hair.
It makes for a tough case for the prosecution.
So as a defense attorney, would you already try to create reasonable doubt based on the 2 sketches?
Of course. And like that's what the entire memo was drafted to. They used the Franks hearing to craft their entire defense around that Franks hearing. You're seeing what it is. Like when they get to that point where they're attacking the fact that the 2 composites are ridiculous, they look nothing like one another. They first say it's this person, and now they're saying that you can't rely on any of that. Beyond that, we're going to have the witnesses on the stand that are not going to identify Richard Allen as the person that they saw on that bridge. They are relying wholly and exclusively on the fact that they found this bullshit unspent casing that they're going to put they're going to put some pinhead on the stand that's going to say, which they would not adopt. If you read that carefully, if you read the PCA and for the arrest, they would not adopt it. They're saying, okay, well, this is his opinion. We're not necessarily saying that we agree, but this is his opinion that it matches, because they weren't willing to take it on as we're adopting his opinion as fact. They just wouldn't, you have to read that carefully. And the science does not support it. But it goes back to that point. You're going to have the experts weigh each other out. And where it gets scary is if Gull allows this warrant to stand and allows the evidence in, you're talking about 12 people that are just going to be hearing about a bullet. They're going to be sold this bill of goods that this guy put himself at the scene at and around the time that the girls were killed. And no matter what the experts say, it's going to stick in their brain that they found a bullet that somebody said matched the gun that Richard Allen had at his house. Sometimes, as scary as that is, that's all it takes, you know, and I've tried enough cases in my life to know you can never know what a jury is going to do. It's a really scary proposition because it's just like the defense's guy is going to come on and tell the truth that it's junk science. You cannot convict a guy on a capital murder case on that bullshit evidence. Don't do it. Use your brains, use your common sense. I mean, if
it was a piece versus the totality of everything else and said, okay, now we've got DNA here and we've got his hair here and his cat's hair over here and the bullet from his gun, all of that together would make sense. But with the bullet, so even if she leaves it in the warrant, even if she leaves the warrant, lets the warrant stand and the bullet's still there, they still have to come up with the chain of custody for this bullet, because 100%. Is that just gone then?
No, I mean, that's the number one thing I'm attacking is you cannot trust that bullet. I have
in any which way.
I have zero proof that bullet is the bullet that is in this courtroom today. None. And they can't provide it to you. You know, I mean, there's no evidence that bullet, whatever they dug out of the ground, is what is sitting in the courtroom. They're not going to be able to prove it. There is no chain of custody for it. It's hot garbage.
What about the rumor that the bullet was in a bag on one of the cops' desks for 5 years? Did you ever hear that, being so close to the case?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard all of it. You know, okay. I mean, it's like, I don't know what to know. Is, you know, I have no idea what's true and what's not. I mean, the one thing that I know is that Richard Allen's original statement to Doolin was buried for 5 years, and they're blaming some civilian fed. You know, oh, it was her fault. She buried it. I'm like, this is a fucking town of 2,700 people. Like, how is it like Doolin saying, hey, you know, that bridge guy, man, I got to tell you, this guy, he's like, this dude, he's like wearing the exact same shit. I mean, how does that go for 5
Nobody
years?
told Doolin what the guy was wearing.
I mean, dude.
And how does Doolin not ever come forward and be like, hey, now that this picture's out,
see the bridge guy picture. That's
right. Yeah.
Yes.
Like, that guy called me and said he was wearing that.
It's impossible.
And I've heard his voice. That's a big one too. You had a conversation with him at a grocery store. Hello.
He also talked about how great their tip line was and how organized it was. Mm-hmm. And they had this entire thing like set up, you know, with X, Y, and Z. And they have like, you know, Liggett's running the tip line and you got Holman on the tip line. But all of a sudden, the one that actually matters, some dude named Dan Doolin took.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, at this point in time, like I said, it's their strongest piece of evidence. And that's what I'm saying. To me, they built in all, like, because you had to look at it when, like, I'm sitting there trying to pretend that it's Allison and I sitting in our law office as we start digging into the discovery for Richard Allen that's been tendered. And as soon as I read Elvis's statement, I'm like screaming through the wall. I'm like, fuck. I'm like, Allison, get the fuck in here. I'm like, so this kid confessed to both of his sisters. His sister went and took a fucking lie detector that everything that he said, he actually said to her. And they're deciding that it's not good. It's not good evidence. We're going to pass on that evidence because the kid's got like a real low IQ.
Yeah.
I mean, the counter argument, because I was having an argument with Brett, and he's like, well, you know, you're one of those guys who says Brandon Dassey's, you know, because he's got the low IQ that, you know, he's super malleable and they were able to, you know, just kind of like put anything in his mouth that they wanted him to say. Well, how's it any different? I'm like, because that kid went to them.
Nobody told him to say anything.
Right? Nobody. Say shit.
His sisters were like, hey, you need to say you were on the bridge, okay? Like, that never happened.
Oh man.
So so they talk about in the memorandum, they say a lot about Murphy, you know, because we got the three cops, we got Click, Ferenczi, and Murphy.
Yeah.
Okay, but Murphy they refer to as Honest Murphy, which I just absolutely love their way that they just word certain things like that. Like everybody else, they're
Right.
fucking liars. Murphy over here, he's the best dude.
Right.
So Murphy creates this Odin report, and he is the one who's talking to Elvis when Elvis says, "So if I had an explanation for the spit, like I'd be okay." Where the hell is Murphy's response?
I don't know.
Where, like, nobody bothers to ask, like, Murphy, what did you say?
Right.
Why would your spit be there? What did you, where? I don't, that doesn't make any sense. I want to know what the hell Murphy said. What did Murphy ask? He's so honest. Tell me what he asked.
It's unbelievable. Like you have a kid who's saying that shit. And like somebody asked like way up in the thing and they're like,
I know they have some tons of questions for you and I haven't shared it.
No, I know. But like this one kind of struck a chord in terms of like, because Scarlett whispered in my ear, she's like, who catfished Abby and got her out to the bridge? And I mean, the most obvious and just devastating possibility is that it's Logan Holder.
Mm-hmm.
These two little 12-year-old kids, like Scarlett has little boyfriends, you know, and when they date, that means that they're texting each other, they're messaging each other, they're saying, hey, we want to go to a movie. Will you bring us to a movie together? And we bring them to a movie. But, you know, if they're able, like I am assuming that the defense is going to be digging in and at some point they have to be seeking to get into, like, I don't know if Logan had a phone. I don't know if Holder went to his kid and said, hey, tell Abby that you want her to go out to the bridge. You'll meet her. I'll drive her out there tomorrow. You guys can meet. And then something tragically happens or something comes up and he says, oh man, I can't bring you out there today. You know, I mean, like, it's plausible. It's a plausible theory that that's what draws the girls out there, you know, and we have the link. You know, the link is scary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, without that link, it becomes more far afoot. But when you have that link where there's knowledge, where there's, you know, they know each other, where there's a direct connection, it becomes a scary proposition. It becomes a more probable proposition. It's a hell of a lot stronger than anything I've seen that's got Richard Allen's fingers all over it. You know what I mean?
Apparently that's what Click thinks too, since Click's the one writing the damn letter. And then he comes out with the statement later, like, yeah, that's not what I believe.
Yeah. I mean, like, what is that all about? Like, I've told this story throughout going over these documents. So my dad was a cop for a long time. And there was a time where he was subpoenaed to testify, and it was to testify against another cop. And he did not want to do that at all because he knew he was done if he did it. And well, to that point, so like I mentioned him earlier, Bill Dorsch, who I'm doing, like, we're looking for additional Gacy victims, old Chicago PD. He's the guy. There's this horrific case. And like, you know, despite the fact that I'm a defense attorney, I happen to love a lot of cops. I love good cops. They're absolutely imperative, and it's a thankless, dangerous job that they go out there and do every fucking day. So like, there's no part of me that doesn't respect what they do. And, you know, but when they're bad, they're the worst because they have so much power with that gun and that badge. And if they wield it in evil ways. So Dorsch is on the job. He's a Chicago homicide detective. This guy named Ronaldo Grovera, who's another homicide detective, Chicago guy, comes in one day and he opens up the mugshot book, and he's got one of his confidential informants with him, and he's trying to close a cold case, a murder case. And Dorsch just sitting at his desk. Grovera's there. His CI points at a dude. He's like, no. Grovera's like, no. He's like, don't you mean this guy? And he points to a different guy, and his CI's like, oh, yeah, that's the guy. So Dorsch is like sitting there. He doesn't say shit. And then he goes into his superior officer, and he goes to his captain. He says, hey, man, I just got to tell you what Grovera just did. So Bill ends up getting run out of the city of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, Guevara put 51 innocent men in prison on murder beefs, 31 of which have been exonerated. The Chicago is paying $20 million a pop on these things. Just Google them. It's an insane story. I'm actually going to do a season on my pod about it because it's like he's the worst cop of all time, you know. And it's like a guy like that, he is the kind of cop that cops should just fucking hate because
But they don't, and you can't tell on him.
I know, and so they ran like Bill lives in Europe. Like they literally ran him out. Both of his sons are both Chicago cops. Both get accommodations out of the ass. Neither one of them, there's a brick on both their careers. Neither one of them have ever gotten a promotion. They're both 20 years on the job. That's the kind of shit that happens when you.
They got to go be a cop somewhere else.
Yeah, that's what happens when you
make it.
That's what happens when you flip on your own. You know, I mean, that's the easiest answer, right? I mean, that's what happens right there. But the thing
is, how dare you throw my name in this damn document? Do you have any idea what you just did to me? I mean, Ferenczi's dead, and then you got, your honest Murphy's. I don't even know where he is, if he's even alive. I have no idea. And clicks alive. Murphy's alive, and then he clicks like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Now everybody knows I wrote this letter talking shit about the fact that these cops didn't do their job. He's going to be exiled.
He really is. It's and I mean, the thing is, you can't undo the police reports. That's the heart of the you just can't forget about the fact that these reports that they drafted exist. And they're not going to be able to get on the stand and deny that they wrote the things. You know what I mean? It's like that's all coming into evidence. There's no way that Judge Gull is going to be able to say, we're not going to allow you to bring in like a Saudi defense. There's too much there. Like they're going to get some other guy did it defense in, and these guys are going to be the guys they're going to point their fingers at. There's no mystery about it, and they might be the guys. And everybody in this chat, we all want the same thing. We want justice for Libby and Abby. I don't give a fuck who it is, but we don't get justice unless it's the right guy.
Yep.
Period. End of story. End of conversation. There's no argument about that. So, and I don't think they have the right guy in custody right now. That's what not only my gut's telling me from the get, but that's now in light of what we now know. And evidence that we had never heard anything about, it's just bolstered it by 1,000, if not 1,000,000. I just there's something off about this case, and I can't put my finger on exactly.
I agree. I really thought that after they arrested Richard Allen, and I didn't, the probable cause, I was like, okay, maybe because they didn't have a ton with the search warrant that they had processed everything yet. They're going to find something on his computers. They're going to find something on his phones. They're going to find the missing clothing. They're going to match the animal hairs that have always been rumored, something, right? Yeah. And then when this came out, I just figured we wouldn't see that until closer to trial or until trial. Right. So I thought they were headed on the right path somewhat. It wasn't thick. It wasn't solid. And then with this, I'm like, they got depositions of these guys saying, no, we got nothing. We got nothing. We had no DNA that connects him. We've got nothing on computers and electronics that connect him. We got nothing that connects him. Give me a damn cat hair. Give me something.
Anything. Some connective tissue. And there's nothing there. Nothing there.
What's crazy is you allegedly have him walking down the bridge looking at his little phone. Thank you. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, is that even real? Did he volunteer himself? Is that 100%? Was that cataloged? Is that right?
Well, he supposedly said that that's what he was doing.
Allegedly.
But we don't know if they actually never checked that anybody was even using his phone.
That's all they've got.
Exactly. I mean,
so they rule out that they have this crazy mystery professor, and this professor comes in like 2 weeks after, and he's like, nope, I looked at the crime scene photos, and that doesn't, or not even the photos. They said they sent him the pictures of like what the sticks looked like. Mm-hmm. So then if the professor rules it out, which makes Liggett rule it out, which makes Holman rule it out, and then Purdy rule it out, and all these guys are like, okay, Odinism is off the table. How is there a group of 3 men still investigating Odinism in 2018?
It's one of the great mysteries of the world. You know, I mean, the fact that, I mean, the mystery Purdue professor, like when I was on with that Richard King guy, and like he clearly had not read the memo. You know, I mean, it was obvious to me that he had not read the memo. I didn't want to like blowtorch him, but like it was really, really hard for me not to blowtorch him. You know, and by the end, because like he dismissed it offhand initially at the beginning of that stream. By the end of it, he's like, "Well, you know, I'm gonna have to take a look at that thing, and you know, maybe there's."
You're like, "Have you seen those crime scene photos?"
Yeah, right. I'm like, man,
no.
Like, and then when his dog barked and he started laughing, I got real pissed off. I'm like, "What the fuck are you laughing at, man?" You know, I didn't say that, but
and then he was like, "I was laughing at my dog," and you're like, "Oh, okay, so good." Okay, man, all good.
Yeah, I have a dog too. Dogs are awesome. Yeah, so I was like, you know,
my dogs are literally wrestling right here. I'm about to go kick them out of the room.
I mean, look, it's there can only be X amount of professors at Purdue University in a 5-year period of time, and really in a month period of time that it could
teach Odinism.
Right. That's like
well, no, supposedly because then he was overseas. The guy was overseas, so they had to send him the photos of just how the sticks were arranged.
But no one knows his name.
Nobody, and there's supposedly a report.
Forget about the cop.
Purdy's a report. Purdy saw the report. He read it.
Forget no one at the university can even give them a clue. Like, we have no idea who you're talking about.
We don't have a fucking professor that even studies that kind of shit.
I've never even heard of Odinism. We wouldn't even support them teaching that at this. I mean, we're Purdue, for fuck's sake. We're the Boilermakers. Boil. I say boil up. You know, I mean, that whole thing is crazy, you know, and it's like we joke about it, but it's like that is what they're relying on for taking a left turn completely away from these guys that clearly, I mean, all of us jumped on our social media. Every single one of these guys, and every single one of them is an Odinist. All of them. Yes. Like every single one of them.
These random 3 other guys who don't work together. So it's not like they were like, hey, we're going to kind of look at this on our own. They were all with the different departments and were part of that task force. And then those 3 guys were like, no, we're still going to stick with the Odinism stuff.
Man,
that's who told them to stick with it. There's somebody in law enforcement.
Common sense and their ability to follow the evidence. That's what told them to stick with it. You know what I mean? It's like they weren't part of the unified command, you know? So they're like, all right, well, you know what? I'm going to fucking follow the evidence, and the evidence is leading me this way. So that's what we're going to do. I mean, that's what a good cop does, is they follow where the evidence leads them, whether they find it to be fanciful or insane or not. You know, I mean, like they had to have been like, well, what the fuck? Like, this is crazy. This like really like some kind of ritualistic shit. You know, but they keep digging in, and then they get substance. It's not as if they didn't run into people where they got a kid who's putting himself at the scene saying he spit on one of the girls. I don't give a shit what his IQ is. I honestly don't.
What's the follow-up question? I need to know.
I mean,
all right.
That is the $1 million question.
This question real quick, or this comment real quick. I'm going to kick these dogs out of here because they're literally wrestling on top of my feet. I'll be right back.
Okay, my theory, BH/Army vet trained, 4 ambush girls were ambushed / chloroformed, 6 to 8 men taken to ritual site. Once ritual was done, a redress, so you're saying redress place at discovery site, water poured on them to throw off cops, law enforcement involved. I mean, it's plausible. It does say he was, you know.
I mean, look, at this point, when we've got 2 correction officers that we know for a fact practice, and look, if we're to believe what the defense says, that they've essentially hijacked, you know, that they're really white nationalists, you know, you like in sheep's clothing, and they're using the Odinism, and I think that they're fascinated by the concepts of it, you know, because it's like when you get like Rich Allen King on there saying, well, like where are they practicing? Like where's their church or whatever they call it? You know, like where's the proof that they're organized? I'm like, it doesn't have to be that.
No,
you could get a group of people that are like fascinated, like me. Like I could have been like, dude, after I watched Vikings, I'm like, man, I want to go to Valhalla. Valhalla sounds dope as fuck, man.
Oh,
I
heck
mean, it
yeah.
sounds amazing. You know, it's like there were like I don't want to have the blood eagle done to me. You know, it seems like that would be like a horrible way to die. You know, I mean, there's like a lot of cool shit for guys that you have that are kind of looking for something to hang their hats on, you know, and they already have this background in terms of like kind of being fueled by hate. And they're like, all right, man, well, this kind of makes sense. And I think that we can merge these two worlds. You know, we're all kind of fueled by hate, that we're all racist. And, you know, because I mean, their basic theory with respect to these guys is that, you know, as we all know, that one of the girls' moms was dating outside their race.
Yeah.
And then that was the motive that, you know, and then they decide to do it under the guise of, all right, well, we're going to do what we need to do. This is going to be a ritualistic sacrifice. And, you know, we think that Odin's asking for it. And this is what we're going to do. And we're going to pick two people that, you know, in terms of our other worldview are not the way that we think they should be, you know? So, I mean, it's like, that's their justification for choosing these two particular girls as their victims or as their sacrificial lambs, so to speak. And man, I mean, it's like, it's a compelling story. I mean, let me put it this way. If that had come out when the PCA came out and say, well, let's pretend, let's suspend disbelief for a minute. Let's pretend that Richard Allen isn't the guy, but that this group of guys is the guy. And the things that we know that are in the discovery are contained in the PCA. Who's not buying it? If law enforcement and the prosecutor is saying, this is our theory, based on the way that people respond to probable cause affidavits and the way that they respond to the prosecutors and their theories when they first drop, and everybody's all so sure that the people that the prosecutor named is the right person or people, I mean, you have to try to think of that possibility. Think if that would have came out. And with Elvis in there and his statement to both his sisters that he spit on one of the girls and that they're going to find his DNA on there, and that Messer had borrowed his girlfriend's car right around the day that the girls were killed. And he comes back and it takes her 3 washings to get the blood off the car. And, you know, you got Westfall, who's by all intents and purposes, the guy seems to be not a good human being.
Yeah.
Sense of the word, you know, it's like, there's just, you've got Holder, like literally posting the day after a picture of the bridge with weird shit to his son. Like, oh, I'm here for you, son. You know, it's like to me, when he posts that thing, that's like the kid has realized that he's somehow potentially complicit, that he's drawn his little girlfriend out to the bridge. And this is what has befallen them. I mean, like when he posts that, because I mean, obviously the easiest thing to say is, look, I mean, he's feeling bad for his kid because his little girlfriend got killed, right? I mean, any of us would.
Anybody goes to the memorial services.
Man, it's a lot. It's just
Yeah.
it's a lot to try to wrap your mind around. It really is. And you know what? The bottom line is it has to be dug into. Like that. That's my thing. Like I refuse to dismiss it offhand. Like there's too much there. There's too much there for us to just dismiss it offhand. And if it's not going to be like, I want the feds to jump into this thing. I want the feds to come in and say, you know what? I'm going to strip away all the clutter from this. And I'm going to look at the statements that are out there, and we're going to start digging in. I'm going to look and see if Holder potentially had a relationship at his job with somebody that would be willing to clock him in and out, and we can get rid of his alibi.
But if there's more than one guy, what's to say that he doesn't come later anyway? I mean, they have to do. There's a whole time frame of an alibi. The girls aren't found until noon the next day.
I know. It's
So,
crazy. Right, and it's like an assumption. It's a time of death. Totally. Like we don't know what their time of death is.
They're basing the time of death on the fact that Derek German was there looking for the girls at 3:30, but he wasn't looking in that exact spot.
Right.
So they're saying that it all had to be done by 3:30, otherwise the family would have come upon them.
Well, he didn't go down there.
That was my whole point.
I mean, no one went down there.
No.
But,
and if you go with Sarah Carbaugh, she doesn't even see him walking until 3:57.
Or whoever she sees walking.
Right.
You know what I mean? Whatever dude she sees walking, you know, I mean, the fact of the matter is like, we're parents. Like, if I'm not hearing from my 12, 13-year-old kid, I'm getting extremely worried, extremely quickly. But before I immediately call the cops, I'm calling every single friend, parent that I know. Is my kid there? Have you seen my kid? I'm calling every relative in the area. Is my kid there? Which is exactly what happened. Like, they're not running to the cops the minute that they don't show up when they're supposed to be getting picked up. They're making calls. They're you know, and the panic begins to build as they're getting negative results from every single person they talk to. No, I haven't seen them. No, I haven't heard. You know what I mean? So, and we're talking about February. If you live in the Midwest, it's dark, pitch black by 5 o'clock in February.
Oh yeah.
You know, so it's like there was no substantive search that was done that night. You know, I mean, there couldn't have been. You know, so. Yeah, we just don't. It has to be taken seriously, and it has to be. There's potentially an innocent man's life on the line, and beyond that, the girls aren't getting justice if they're going to try to convict the wrong guy. Period. It's that simple. Like, I'm not rooting for Richard Allen to not be the guy. What I'm saying is,
I don't know Richard Allen. I don't know care if he's the guy or not. I just want to make sure that he is the guy.
Exactly. That's it. That's
I don't know him
on this thing. That's all it is. It's like I'm not a Richard Allen fan.
Yeah.
I'm just saying something stinks, and we got to figure it out.
Yeah. I'm gonna make sure that I'm gonna start a whole bunch of questions for you. So we're gonna give you quick questions. I literally could just keep you here all night just chatting with you.
Yeah, and ironically, I'm that guy who could actually talk all night. It's like I can do this for like hours. I can go for hours, man.
I really could.
I really.
So I know that, like, I really would hope that you would come back at some point.
Oh yeah,
enjoyed it enough here to come back.
I love this.
But I could do this all night long.
And admittedly, I'd never seen your stream, but like, don't take any offense to that. I'm so like, I don't watch streams often. You know, so but I will now. I mean, you guys, you're great. This is great. Like, you're great.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's a great stream. It really is.
So the first question is, can we?
I like to get you in my fold of humans. That all right. So
that's the first question.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, BG, there you go.
Only if you change your initial.
Yeah, only if you change your name, please.
BG, I don't know if you're the one who's allowed to ask that question. Okay, Bob, talk about the other motion that's not getting attention, the motion to have RA moved.
Yeah, and that is the one that is not getting any attention, and that is, so they took their first bite at the apple in June. I was there. So that was when we first heard about these guards that were filming him with a camcorder when they were coming on their attorney-client visits, which is
But it didn't have audio. It was just video.
Bob. Right. So, and like, I'm sitting in so like that day, like we were all heading, like I was heading to Delphi expecting a completely different hearing to take place. So because they had switched streams and they had basically amended their motion, and they were supposed to be going in on something else. I then learned like that morning that was also getting tabled, and that they were doing this thing where they're trying to get Allen out of that jail. And like we had read, obviously, exactly.
They have him in prison.
Correct.
Which is just unheard of.
It's insane. It's insane. It's like, it's completely. So like we're sitting in the courtroom. They bring Allen in. He's like a shell of a human being. He's got the 1,000-mile stare. He's completely vacant. I've got Kurt with me again. I'm like, look at him, man. I'm like, I'm like, he's not there. Like, he's either tranquilized or he's like fucking like completely mentally destroyed, or a combination of both. I don't know what it is, but it's like he is absent, like mentally, completely. You can just see it in his eyes. It's the windows of the soul. We know it. You can see when just think about like if you've decided to not drink one night and you're out with your shit-faced friends and you're looking at their eyes, man. Like the eyes tell you everything you need to know. You know what I mean? And this was vacant, like no one's home. It was crazy. Like, and I was 3 feet away from him. You know, I'm like staring at him. I'm like, my God. I'm like, you know, and we'd all read what the defense was alleging, you know, prisoner of war, and you know, and so they put the warden on, and obviously I'm expecting him to deny all of it, and there's probably truth that, but the things that mattered to me were the fact that they were videotaping him. Sound or not is irrelevant, because if I'm going to visit my client to prepare them for trial, and there's any law enforcement, any corrections officers, which are in ear and eyes of the state, and I know that anything they see or observe is going to go directly to the prosecutor's office, I'm not saying a fucking word to my client, and I'm instructing my client not to say a fucking word to me about the case, period. So that's what I left. I left out of there infuriated about that fact. And they never fleshed any of this shit out. There was never any mention of these things about patches, in which they obviously thought was unusual, but we now know that they didn't have that discovery yet. That didn't get tendered to them until September of this year. So then when they start putting that shit together, and I did this on Jay's stream the other night, I'm like, they had the young college kid that Rosie would bring to the prison with them, who was going to go to law school. And they got this kid like plowing through all the evidence and sorting it and trying to make heads or tails of it. And, you know, and they put him on the stand to testify, because Rosie can't do it himself because he's the trial attorney. And this kid's like, man, you know, he's like, hey, come here, kid, come here. What was that? What was the patch that those two correction guys had on their shit? And the kid's like, yeah, it was like, in Odin we trust. Read this. You know, like just freaking the fuck out. You know, when they're reading this shit and they make that connection, like your mind, like as a defense attorney, your fucking brain's exploding. You know what I mean? Like, you think about that, where something like that kind of comes together and it all starts to make sense. And I get why they wrote that one paragraph, the footnote 15 paragraph, that way, because it's probably what happened. In all honesty, it's really probably, I know from Anthony Garcia, him being in there for 3 years, 23 hours a day in solitary, the guy lost his fucking mind, and they tortured the shit out of him. And I'm not even talking about physically, I'm talking about psychologically. They don't allow him to sleep. They're banging on the walls. They keep the lights on. They say terrible shit. That is what happens, especially in a prison. In Douglas County Jail in Omaha, Nebraska, in Douglas County, it's what they were all doing to him. Like, they all thought he was the guy. They thought he was the guy that murdered an 11-year-old kid. They don't take kindly to child killers in the joint. And that includes, of course, the inmates, but also the corrections officers that are housing them. So, like, for people to be dismissing the fact that probably is what happened. And if there's this connection between these guys, which you know that Rosie and his PIs are out there digging into like a mofo, trying to make a connection between these guys who happen to be enamored with the exact same religion that these other guys are. They're trying to make that connection. They're like, I mean, we need to see the phone records. I can't, like, anybody, if I'm Rosie, I'm saying anybody who feels comfortable enough potentially putting this man to death without demanding to see the phone records to see if there's a connection between these 4 other people that we've spoken to you about and have produced evidence that they said that they were at the scene, and these 2 guys who were housing him and who we believe extracted a confession out of him by threatening his family, that's on you. You have to live with that. That his life is on your hands. That's what you're going to have to live with the rest of your life. You know, I mean, like, it's a super compelling argument, you know, and we need to see it. We need to know what is going on with these guys. We need to know if there's a connection, and it should be done. That's like, if we're looking for justice for the girls, it has to be done. We have to dig into it. If it gets blown apart, okay, well, then maybe we're looking harder at Richard Allen. Then maybe they aren't so far afoot. Maybe that is the guy. Because right now where I sit, he ain't the guy. because I see a lot more smoking guns in a lot other places than Richard Allen. And that's just how I feel about it. And no one's changing my mind.
I think that the other issue, though, that comes in hand is that the people who are somewhat involved in the investigation also question whether he's the guy.
Yeah.
I want you guys to show me that he's the guy. Show me I'm wrong.
I cannot wait. I can't wait to read the letter from Click.
Right.
Yes.
I want all the evidence that they put on here, the 126 whatever exhibits they attached to this memorandum. I'm like, I want them.
Oh God, we all want them. Like,
give me the Odin report at least 12 pages. I'll take
it. I'll take it. You can keep the 85 pager. I'll just take the 12. Give me
the 12. I'm okay.
That. Give me that and Click's letter, and I'm good. I'm not greedy. Just let me see what he's saying. You know, I mean, yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing.
All right, let me go back over here and see what we got next. Okay, so ask Bob if catfishing accounts can be compared legally to a community gun.
If catfishing accounts can be compared legally to a community, what's a community gun? What are we talking about? Like a gun shared by multiple individuals?
I would think like a gang gun, like
a gun that gets passed around.
Yeah,
like a few guys.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a matter of being able to subpoena the shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's certainly not going to be the state at this point, but Rosie and Baldwin certainly can try to subpoena everything, you know, and if the state's going to fight them on it, you know, I mean, it's going to be up to Gull to decide whether or not it's like what's going on with the Karen Reed case in Canton. You know, it's like that's another rabbit hole case, you know, but it's like I want to see their fucking phone records for fuck's sake. Like, like, are we trying to get to the truth here, or are we playing some bullshit game? You know, it's like let's see the record. Fess it up. If it's my phone and a guy died on my front lawn and I didn't have a goddamn thing to do with it, hey, here's my phone, bro. Have at it. You might find some fucked up shit there, but what you're not going to find is that I killed this guy in my house and dragged him out in my front
that you
lawn.
Googled how long does it take somebody to die in the snow?
I mean, dude, it's crazy. You know, but so
you can't go down that case.
I think, that's a whole nother stream, and like it's a great stream too. But and Sleuthy's all in on that one too. Like we could have had Sleuthy on this too. Like
absolutely.
I mean, I'm just like she's my ace, man. I fucking like every time that like I love her. Like I like anybody who like ever casts any kind of like even remotely tries to cast shade on her. They're about to get
in a Twitter war.
About to get the fist. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I think so. I mean, it basically is going to be by way of subpoenas. They're going to try to subpoena. You know, they're going to try to subpoena, and then they'll fight the subpoenas, and then it's ultimately going to be up to Gull whether or not she's gonna say, hey, you're going to have to comply with the subpoena and turn the shit over. You know, and I think that there's enough there in terms of what was contained in the discovery tendered to the defense to where I see it's a very difficult situation for her to deny them. I think that they have a right to investigate it. So the answer is yes.
I don't have an answer for that.
Oh, my phone.
I was like, what?
No, my watch.
I don't have an answer.
My watch thinks I'm full of shit.
See, here comes the AI stuff, y'all. It's happening.
Oh, man.
Take it off, Bob. Take over.
Oh, man. Oh.
Okay, so what do you think about the Colt being an okay defense in Lori Vallow's case, but all of a sudden Colt is not acceptable in Delphi?
Well, first of all, is it Chabonet?
Chabonet.
Chabonet, you need to listen. Allison and I did 12 episodes on fucking Vallow that are next level. They're amazing. We followed that trial. We were listening every night to this, all the testimony, and then we were trying to go day for day, but because the defense was doing nothing in that case, it was impossible to keep up because we would get the sound at 6 p.m. Allison would work like a dog listening to this in like 2.5 speed, taking the notes. And then we'd play the clips. We pulled out the good stuff from the testimony, and then we'd give you the legal analysis. It's our Vallow coverage. Anybody who's listened to it will vouch. It's amazing. So it's a great question. And like that part of the Vallow case was the most fascinating aspect of it to me, because it was like the intertwining of the First Amendment, of the criminal justice system and the lack of the insanity defense, and the fact that even had they been able to employ it there, she wouldn't have allowed them to, which I think spoke volumes as to where her mindset was, that she truly believed all that shit. Because what they had done in that particular case is in Idaho, you can't bring the insanity defense, but they carved out this little niche where you can attack the intent aspect of the statute, meaning, like, say for instance, if she really believed that they were like that they were dark and that they were demons and they were no longer her children, but they were demons just in the
zombies
vessel.
had taken over.
Right, that they were, just these demons that were in this vessel that was no longer her children. And part of the statute for homicide is that you're killing a human being. If her mind, they could have put doctors on that said, look, in no way, shape, or form did she believe that these were her children anymore. She just did not believe that they were her children at all. And I think that there's, I hate to say it, but I think that that's true. I think she snapped, like, she lost her shit. I think that
I'm thinking, like, if anybody needed some insanity, Idaho needed it with her, because that was, she's lost it.
But it wouldn't have mattered. She had a hand in killing her kids. She was going down. It's like Good Will Hunting. You hit a cop, you're going in. It's that type of shit, man. It's like, it wouldn't have mattered, but like that intersection of all those things was fascinating to me. And it's a great question because, it's like, what's good for the goose should be good for the gander. It's like, why is it acceptable here when we're talking about, and I mean, look, we dug into Mormonism. Like, we had people coming at us left and right, like, hey, you're getting a few things wrong. And like, our tagline is just facts. We're not trying to fuck shit up. And if I fuck shit up, I own it. I don't try to act like I'm right about shit that I'm wrong about. Instead, I take it in as knowledge, and now I know it and I correct it. So anytime, and we had huge amounts of people like being super helpful. I didn't take it as attacks. Like, hey, you're getting little aspects of the religion wrong. I'm like, hey, I had to buy like Mormonism for Dummies to learn what the fuck y'all are talking about. Like,
I need Odinism for Dummies because I'm in the same boat. Like, I never studied religion. So knowing all those things are not my forte. That's not where I'm trying to figure it out.
Not my shit.
They go to school for years to learn this, and I'm trying to do it in 10 days.
Days, exactly. Yeah. So, and I own that. Like, in the beginning, like, I think the first episode, like, we are not Mormons. We're not practicing Mormons. And I'm like a lapsed Catholic like a million times over. It's like my dad didn't even have me baptized because he was a hippie. So you know what I mean? So it's like I was like, I'm just a rogue out there, man. I just try to live by the golden rule. And I'm like, look, treat others as I want to be treated. And I feel like I'll be pretty good at the end of the day. But, it's like, I think it's a great point. I think, why is it okay there? And and I guess the argument is that Mormonism is an established religion and Odinism isn't. At least
well, this is actually a question
was in Scandinavia. I mean, that was their shit up there. And it's like, it wasn't like, it's not native to our country, and it's been appropriated by some folks here, but I mean, where Joseph Smith created that Mormon religion here in the States. So it's like,
but they created their own version of the religion. So they weren't even Mormon anymore. They were whatever.
It. Yeah.
Right. And so this was when you were on that stream the other night and you were talking to the Rick King guy, and he was like, show me something, like, show me anything they've done in the past that leads this group of people into doing this, and like who the leader is. And I initially thought about like Valo Daybell, because I was like, one, they can't prove who the leader is because depending on which camp you ask, it's the other one. Right. So we don't have a leader. And then two, these guys weren't killing people before.
Right.
So how do we, and when a cult first
that we know of.
But right. Same thing here. So like with these Odinites, not necessarily is Odinism the actual issue. It's a branch. Like every freaking religion has these extremists, and they go out and they do these things. So now you're going to have like the same fight. Who is the leader, Patrick Westfall or Brad Holder? Right. So who knows? They're going to blame each other for it, and he already has. He tells us.
Or maybe it's a collective. Right. It doesn't have to be Nexium, and it doesn't have to be Scientology, and it doesn't have to be, there doesn't have to. Right. It could be a collective with a bunch of people that are like-minded and are like, man, this Viking shit's cool as fuck. You know, I'm like, I'm down with this, man. Like these runes are cool as fuck. I want to build runes. I want to see if this shit works. I want to, you know what I mean? It's like, there doesn't have to be, I reject the notion that there has to be a leader. I mean, when you're trying to suck people into a cult and and you have a compound, that's a different scenario. That
Correct.
That doesn't have to be the answer for everything, because it's not.
No.
You know, people could just be into a
There's
concept.
always a first time. Like these people, if there's no human sacrifice in the history of this Odinite group. Well,
there has to be a first. There's a first time for everything.
Right. So there's
John
a first
Gacy like had to kill his first victim. And then
Right.
he got the taste. You know what I mean? It's like,
So it's like, show me a history, and it's like, I can't show you a history on somebody's first crimes.
Exactly. The history you're looking at the history. You're looking at the beginning of history right there.
And Elvis just joined.
Right. Exactly.
So he didn't have a history yet.
Exactly.
All right, let me see what else we got here. Okay, so Crime Sleuthin had a question, and she'd asked this earlier, and I pulled up some documents for it too. Have you seen this section on the report of the bullet and how it says itself that the report is subjective in nature? What does that mean?
Yes, Crime Sleuthin. That's exactly the language I was talking about, like, I don't know, an hour ago. Going like whenever I was talking about
this a while ago, I started though. So
yeah,
I'm just coming back to it.
That is exactly the language I was. Thank you for asking that question. That's exactly the language I was talking about, where law enforcement didn't adopt it. You know what I'm saying? Like when they put in there this is his opinion. We're not necessarily adopting it as ours. Like that's when you see the word subjective in there. That's exactly what it means. That the law enforcement is saying, okay, this guy, because they know, like if they don't know, who does know is McLeland. He knows that it's not good case law. And he's like, look, it's not great evidence. It's why I keep trying to tell people, I'm like, cops don't understand the statutes the way that lawyers do. Lawyers understand the standards and the burdens that have to be met. They understand what a judge needs to see and hear in order to find probable cause. That's not the cops' purview. That's not what their job is. They didn't go to law school. They weren't like law school is literally reading statutes and learning how to interpret them. That's literally what they teach you. They do not teach you how to practice law. They teach you black letter law and how to interpret statutes. That's what they teach you. Cops do not know how to do that. If you have cops that went to law school, they know how to do that. Cops that didn't go to law school, who are sometimes guys that maybe have a bachelor's at most, or sometimes they have an associate's at most. They're not trained as attorneys. They don't decipher the law. They don't interpret the law the same way. That's why you know for a fact that when this thing was drafted by somebody in the prosecutor's office, whether it was Nick or someone of his underlings, whoever it was, with the help of the cops, you know, that's they're clearly getting the information from the investigation from the cops, right? They're providing
their cops reports,
right, and then they're drafting it up, right? And so, and he's saying, look, it's not strong law. We don't want to adopt it. I don't want you as the affiant saying that we're relying on this, but we're saying that we've got a guy who is saying that in his opinion, his subjective opinion and his opinion alone, that he says that it's a match to Allen's gun. That's it. And you know what I mean? So they're not adopting it in a way like when I read that, I'm like, oh, well, they're not hanging their hat on that. That's for certain. You know, it's kind of like good old paragraph. Can't remember if it's paragraph 6 or paragraph 7 where they talk about the memo in the state's response, where they say, you know, it's it's colorful. I forget what the second adjective is, and then unprofessional, but it's the sentence after, the phrase after, and not completely true. Like when I read that in the state's response, I'm like, my God, they just admitted that there's portions of this memo that are true. I mean, what else? There it is. Good old number 7.
Good old number 7.
Good old number 7. It's my favorite paragraph in the state's response, which was measured. It's exactly what I thought the state would do. They didn't bite on the Odinism stuff. They stuck to the law and facts, which is what they should have done. You know, 8 pages, clean. But that paragraph
was
right
a good
there,
response.
I mean, they're dealing with that. Well, they know Liggett lied.
Right. Well,
You
they
know,
say
that was
to not intentionally or recklessly omit evidence or lie about evidence in the probable cause affidavit to support the search warrant. But it's like your own reports show that he did.
your own discovery.
Yes.
Surrender
That's what
to
I'm like,
us.
so- and
Read
you can't
paragraph
you know,
7 out loud. Read it out loud because I love to
that
hear it
once
out
again,
loud.
while the memorandum is colorful, dramatic, and highly unprofessional, it is not completely true. It's not completely untrue.
Your tone and tenor were perfect. I thank you for that because that's exactly how that paragraph should be read. So that was amazing.
I was like, highly unprofessional. Like that's really that's your biggest takeaway from it. Yeah, and I don't disagree that there were things in there I didn't think necessary. We already talked about that.
Sure.
But I was
And
like,
not completely true.
yeah, that's like it's not completely a lie.
Oh
either.
man, yeah, it's something. It's something. It's a good one.
All right, let me go to the next one. Let me see. Okay, so we talked about that. Da, da, da. Have you ever worked with Jason Jensen, the PI?
I have not. I have not.
All right, there you go, Shay. I don't know who Jason. That doesn't sound familiar to me. So
It's weird. The name rings a bell.
well, Jensen is kind of just.
Pretty generic.
I don't know. Like it just rings a bell to me. I don't know.
It does, right? It rings a bell to me too.
Jensen.
Like maybe.
Well, I don't know because like Westfall, I was like struggling with Westfall, and then I realized it's from another case. I was like,
Yeah.
Westfall, I know that name. I know that name.
Right. And like the coach of like a basketball team, he said he spells it with a PH instead of FAL.
Oh, PH.
Yeah.
Okay, so where are the courts headed in dealing with the genealogy DNA searches through people opted out and other issues there may be? Okay, well, I think that's actually probably a question. I think that was you could take it though. Have at it.
No, I mean, so Wheel B, is that Wheel B?
Yep.
No, we got into that. You must have been late to the stream. We kind of dug into that for
I
what?
starred a bunch of comments so that I didn't lose them. So some of the comments, some of the questions are why I was just totally stealing your time.
My short answer is that it better be headed to the Supreme Court of the United States because it is an issue that has to be dealt with. That is the most powerful tool in the tool belt of law enforcement, bar none. There's nothing even close. That combination of being able to use DNA and like this isn't hobbyists anymore putting together family trees like my grandmother did when she was dying of leukemia, like in 1985. And I can't imagine what she had to do that I still have this thing that I treasure that she put together a family tree for me. And it must have been an extraordinary amount of work and phone call, like just like digging, like they could put these families, like they keep trying to act like the family trees are really super difficult to put together now. It's just not the case. I mean, with you know what they have available at their in terms of resources with the internet, it's made it exponentially more easy to put these family trees together.
Those sites
like,
make it so you can't access people who are living, and so you can't get living people's information. But now there's so many apps, you just pay $20 a month and you can run a background check on anybody you want,
anybody.
and it keeps all their relatives. So I have very extensive family trees. I actually have one on Delphi, ironically, because I couldn't keep track of who was related to who anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's for real. It's true. So yeah, so what my hope is, and I don't think it's going to be with this case, Wheel. I think it's going to be with Koberger. I think that ultimately that issue is going to be raised, and I think Ann Taylor raised it enough for because the Supreme Court's going to have to deal with it. Because like I just want to give everybody a real quick like legal lesson, like on how the law is made in this country. So we all, you know, elect our legislatures, the Senate and the House, and they're the folks that draft new statutes. Okay, they call them House bills, and House bills get drafted, and they make it through the Senate, and ultimately, you know, and there's federal law and there's obviously state law, and you can bring it down to the state level. Same deal, you know, where it's the House and the Senate, and then it gets passed by the governor. He signs off on it. Now, then you have a statute, and it could be something, for instance, that is brand new, like a new type of crime that they've never had a statute on. Like think example, like the internet. When the internet came to be, and porn and kiddie porn and all that shit came to be. There didn't exist statutes relating to it, so they had to draft them up. Now, what lawyers do is once the thing is written by the legislature and it comes out, then it starts getting interpreted, because we then have to figure out how the law as it's written is applied in practice. So that is the entire purpose of what lawyers exist for. You have a lawyer on one side interpreting it one way. You have a lawyer on the other side interpreting it the other way. All right. So that is how the law is developed. So now when you have something like IGG come up and there's a solid argument that we do have a privacy interest, because remember, in order, like right now, they don't have that standing. And Wheel, I don't know if you were here earlier when I was talking about standing. You have to have standing to make a Fourth Amendment claim. And right now, as the law is currently situated, if they go to my 16th cousin, like 40 times removed, and he shares my YSTR strand and they get it, and I try to go into a court of law and saying, okay, they caught me on this thing, but they did an illegal search because they used my family member's DNA, who happens to share my exact strand. So I have an interest in that DNA strand. It's my information contained therein. You don't have standing to do it right now. The court's going to say, that's like that person, your 16th cousin, 40th removed, he can bring a claim, but you can't because you don't have standing whereas the law is currently situated. So that's got to get figured out. Now, and like I was telling Teresa, like, look, man, I want IGG to be used. It's a very powerful tool, though. We have to put a governor on it. All I'm suggesting is have some probable cause before you allow the search to take place. Get a warrant. That's all. Do some good old fashioned police work before you're digging into the IGG stuff, because it's way too prone to be abused. It just is. And as the databases grow, which they're going to start growing incredibly quick, because we have good souls out there. We have good citizens out there. When they're seeing 40-year-old bodies, Jane and John Doe's getting identified and like people getting their names back, people want to be helpful. People are like, man, I want to help with that. I'm willing to put, I don't have to worry about shit. I don't commit crimes. I'm going to submit my DNA. Boom, there it is. And these databases are going to fill up quickly. And it's like, and now as technology advances and it's so easy to collect it off of anything, it's just like, it's going to be a thing that has to get dealt with. And I'm hoping that Koberger is the one that's going to get up to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court, and I don't know, and I never talk about politics on my pod, and I never talk about politics on the stream, but as the court is currently situated, it's a conservative court, and conservative courts tend to lean towards law enforcement. They tend to shrink our civil liberties, and they tend to give law enforcement a bit more leeway. That's just historically how it is with conservative and liberal courts. Liberal courts lean towards protecting the citizens and saying, okay, we're going to make it a little tougher. You got to get your probable cause. We're going to require a warrant. So, I mean, it's a fascinating area of the law, and it's one that's going to have to get dealt with. And we don't want it to be abused, and we don't want it to go away, because it's a super powerful tool, and it's going to be super helpful in cracking a lot of cases and solving a lot of cold cases. So we want it to be a part of our in our tool belt in terms of law enforcement being able to use it, but we just need it to be controlled.
So I have a question, though, because what seems to be the issue with getting it controlled, as you're saying, is it's not ending up in trial. The IGG doesn't make it to the stand. So what type of case law, or how are these people?
Because I understand your question with you. I'll interrupt you because I know what you're saying. No, it's good. Basically, it's that issue. And Taylor, if Judge says no, I'm not letting you get the IGG stuff. I agree. It doesn't fall under whatever it is, Idaho Rule 17, whatever that particular rule is. I can't remember it offhand. But if the judge makes an adverse ruling, it doesn't don't misconstrue what appeals are about. Appeals go back, this is all part of the trial process. Every motion filed pre-trial, if you believe the judge has made an error and allowed evidence in, or kept evidence out, that's absolutely an appellate issue. Like that's like, frankly, that's more those. Yeah.
So you have to have something that shows that that would even be that the judge is making a mistake, because the only precedent currently right now is that it's not the defense team does not have rights to the information.
Right. Or
we don't own the database, so we can't give you the database.
But don't forget that that's only one aspect of the law. Changing the law is the other part.
That's what I'm asking. Yeah. So how do you go from that, from having only precedent where it says defense doesn't get it? How does Ann Taylor go and have anything change?
Well, to me, it's a case of, you know, and I've had arguments about it. It's a case of first impression, because DNA, we've never had this where we can argue that we have a privacy interest in somebody that is a distant relative of ours, that we actually have a privacy interest in that person's DNA because they share it. It's shared. So, I mean, it's just we've never had this issue come about, period. It just says we've never had the technology to have it come about. So to me, it's first blush. It just is, because it's never been dealt with, because we've never had the technology to get there yet. So now it's got to be dealt with. So that's how the law evolves. Like, you know, there's bad laws in this country. We know what happens with them. They get swept to the wayside and they go away. You know, I mean, there was one point in time when they considered African-American and Black people to be 3/5 of a human being and to be property, chattel. So there's fucking shitty laws that exist, and that law will go away if there's smart people up on the bench and like, okay, this isn't how it is. Or it's a case where we just haven't dealt with it before, you know, and it's got to be resolved. It's got to be litigated. It's got to be argued. And you want a bunch of minds that are supposed to be some of the best and the brightest in the world sitting on that bench in the high court figuring shit out, you know, and like Ann Taylor has paved the way. Like her motion work is what's paving the way. She has created an appellate issue. That's why, like when you're going nuts watching a trial, whether there's objection, they're objecting. If you don't object, you're waiving the issue for appeal, theoretically. So that's when they're objecting. Like most of the time, if it's relevance or 402 or whatever the case may be, or, you know, asked and answered, those aren't appellate issues. But when you get to objections or like the pre-trial phase of any trial is where I say it constantly. I beat people over the head with it because they just don't understand it, because they never show it on TV, except now. Now we're starting to see what I've been telling people for years is where the real war is waged in every trial, because this is what the fight is all about. What's getting in and what's staying out of evidence. And now we're getting to hear it, you know, and that's why, like, with respect to like the Allen case, like you've got Rosie in there and Baldwin saying, we want this thing tested. We want it televised. Yes. People can learn from this. Like, this is a case where people can learn how the judicial system works. And he's right. And like, aside from the Constitution and, you know, that trials are supposed to be public, the fact of the matter is you've got the state on the opposite side of it saying, we don't want it televised, which to me from both sides is telling. But like for me, like if you're worried about tainting a jury pool, the things that you don't televise are the pretrial motions, because that's where people will hear about evidence that will not ultimately end up at trial. Or if that sticks in their head, if they're following the case and they somehow get in the jury and they never hear this piece of evidence they heard this big fight about that the judge kept out, they still know it. It's still in their subconscious. It's twirling around in there. And, you know, that's where the battle is. It really is, because the judge is the arbiter of what comes in and what comes out. That's the judge's role pre-trial. And when it gets to trial, they're still the gatekeeper of evidence. That's their number one role if it's not a bench trial.
But there's no reason to keep the cameras out. I'm a firm believer in having cameras in all courtrooms.
Agree. Well, agreed. And like the argument that it's relative to like the issue of tainting the jury pool's over once the jury's been impaneled. That's done. You can't make that argument anymore. The jury's in place. So there's no tainting the pool. That can't be the argument anymore. So I don't know what the argument can be. I would much rather have me being able to be in the courtroom reporting and live tweeting to people what the fuck's going on, and some reporter that half knows what is going on in the courtroom. You know what I mean? It's like, That's
And then
why
you
I'm
gotta follow like 7 different reporters because they're all reporting different pieces that they can actually get on there.
and
Another
in Garcia, it's like I had an AP reporter report, like she was sitting in the courtroom and like she puts on the AP wire that the prosecution stated that they found Anthony Garcia's weapon and like said those exact words on the side of the road that like a truck driver had found it, this gun that matched the gun that was, or it was the type of gun that was used to kill Roger Brumbeck, one of the people in the second set of homicides. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, so I'm calling her and I'm like, you have to retract that immediately. Everyone's picking that up and it's inaccurate. It's not, they didn't find his weapon. They found a weapon similar to the weapon that was used to kill Roger Brumbeck. There's no like, but that kind of shit that gets out there is like devastating, you know, when you're trying to have a fair trial, you know, so it's like words matter and understanding what you're hearing and seeing matters. You know what I mean?
All right, let me see what else we got. But I absolutely agree with you. I think it's just
wait here. Put squeaky wheel up. Squeaky wheel 857. I have no idea how a judge is going to sort through that 136-page defense motion and establish what's fact versus what's all made up. I disagree with Motta. I think RA is guilty. Squeaky wheel. Why? Why do you think RA is guilty?
I don't even see Squeaky. I don't even see Squeaky here.
I don't see Squeaky either.
Maybe Squeaky left. That was all the way back at 8:50, an hour ago. He made that up when Bob called him out. Oh yeah. So yeah, he was there at 8:57. Squeaky typed on. I'm curious to these people that think that RA is guilty. Yep, they sure do see it now through live tweets or hearings that we can see. Yeah, I mean, being able to see it is, I mean, it's everything. You know, I mean, it's like, and beyond that, like being able to, as much as I appreciated the fact that at least they did the audio on Valo, you're still missing being able to see the reactions of the witnesses on the stand and their body language. I mean, like they tell you, I mean, there's in jury instructions instruct you that you have to use your eyes and your ears and all your senses when trying to determine the credibility of a witness. So we're being robbed of that as the people's witnesses or the people's jury out here if we can't watch it.
There's Squeaky Wheels back.
So Squeaky, you're big on the confession, huh? Squeaky, let me ask you, did you read the memo?
Squeaky's been here while I read the memo. So I don't know if they read it themselves, but I read it.
Was Squeaky there for it? So Squeaky's not buying that these two guards that had the Odinist patches could have ever intimidated Richard Allen into saying that he killed the girls. Like that's not even a distinct possibility. I mean, I disagree with you. I just do.
It's okay. So we're good with that. We're good with disagreeing.
Yeah, I mean, I love disagreements. Nothing would ever get settled if everyone agreed on everything.
No.
Like things
All
would
right,
just...
So then the question is, C-Dub would like to know, do you think that Adnan Syed is innocent or guilty?
Oh, man.
Do we need probably another live on that?
We do. Here's my thing, and like I said, my buddies, the prosecutors, they they put out Adnan's guilty, 14 episodes, went through all the shit. They're getting a lot of static from pro Adnan camp. It got ugly in a lot of different ways. Here's my bottom line with that case, and I thought they did a great job of the series. I thought that they, I think that they probably went into it thinking he was guilty, so they kind of worked towards that end. I mean, I could be wrong, but like the way I'm going through Avery is I realized when I saw Making a Murderer, and if anybody is into Avery, Alice and I are going to crush that fucking case like no one's ever crushed it. Like I'm telling you, if you've listened to me tonight, just add in my wife, who's just a genius, brilliant attorney. And we're going through everything. We have no agenda. I sit on the fence. Stephen Avery could be guilty. Stephen Avery could be innocent. I don't know. And I'm not going to know until I go through every single piece of evidence. It's going to be probably 40 episodes because I do deep dives. I don't give a shit that things are supposed to be 12 episodes. I don't care. I tell a story and I dig in as far as I need to dig in. So with Adnan, here's what it boils down to me. Jay Wiles, in light of what happened with Mosby vacating his conviction, had every opportunity to come forward and say, you know what? I'm just going to lay it out there. The fucking cops coerced me to say that shit. They picked me up on a beef. They told me this is what I had to say. And they fed me the answers. Cause and I was getting pushback from like Bob Ruff was like, what are you fucking talking about? Like, you think he wants to get his ass? I'm like, no one's suing him. You think Adnan's suing him if he's exonerating him and truly clearing his name? They're fucking joining forces and suing the fuck out of the cops. They're not like, no one's suing Jay. Like my problem is that Jay Wild stood mute after the conviction was vacated. It gives me pause. Like it just does. It gives me pause. And like no one has been able to convince me that there would be any reason whatsoever why Jay Wiles wouldn't just come forward and say, yeah, man, you know, like I gotten picked up on some shit. You know, I'd been down, he had a record. I mean, he could have been like, if they picked him up with any weight, he's looking at 8, 10, 12 years on a drug bust. And this is back in when weed was illegal. You know, this is like, believe me, people did decades on weed cases. You know, I mean, so Shay, you think Jay's the guy? I mean, Jay could be the guy. That's the only explanation as to why he hasn't come forward, because he's the dude. That's it. You know? I mean, I think to me, that's the only other explanation as to why he wouldn't come forward.
Okay, so do you know anything about the Tara Grinstead case?
Refresh. Yes, I know the name. Give me, like, I follow so many cases.
Bo Dukes. So it's Ryan Dukes. They essentially. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. That's another one. It's like, and who's there's two. It's Grinstead and it's the Tennessee girl, the nurse, that they ended up convicting a couple guys on that. That I'm not so sure they have the Holly Bobo. Like, you guys remember that case? I don't remember that one.
I don't. No.
Yeah, check that one out. Like, they ended up getting a conviction on that, but I don't love it. I really don't.
I'll take a look at that one.
Okay, what about Rodney Reed?
Don't know it.
What's that?
Texas, Stacey Stites.
Don't know it. Don't know that one.
He was the one, Teresa, that he was going to be getting executed around COVID, and then Kim Kardashian like rallied around and they did a stay, I think.
I don't remember the case. I remember Kim Kardashian.
Okay, well, you know.
Jay, if you're still here, I do want a Viking funeral. You're exactly right. Jay's like, Bob wants to be put in a boat when he's dead and they shoot a fiery arrow at it. That's it. I want a Viking funeral. I mean,
you're not getting one.
Is that the rule? You can't ask for it.
Yeah, nobody's doing it.
You have to earn it.
All right. So what about Summer Wells? Are you familiar with Summer Wells' case?
No.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so she's a 5-year-old little girl that went missing in Tennessee, in Rogersville.
Man.
She's still missing, and nobody's been arrested. Nothing. She's just been gone for over 2 years.
A
lot of people think her parents are involved. There's the other kids were taken away due to drugs. It's a very, I would say popular, but it's a very interesting, intriguing case because there are some interesting characters involved.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one, but it sounds devastating.
Out of Rogersville, Tennessee.
It sounds.
Okay, so let me see what else we got for you. How do you feel about going? How do you feel about going on with cult experts who seem so dismissive of all the key points in the filing?
Well, if you watch the Surviving the Survivor, I handled it with great aplomb. I thought, I had to put.
I think he was going to go read the memorandum after.
I think I got him to go probably dig into that memorandum after that stream as well.
and probably see if you could find any crime scene photos.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, come on, man.
Okay, let's see. Tanner Neal asks, how come no one looks into Shane Evans? It's easy to frame RA when you're mayor and now chief deputy prosecutor. And Tanner Neal, I actually know a whole podcast that does stuff on Shane Evans, and the voice and the comparisons between Shane Evans' voice and BG's voice, and not even BG's voice, but the dispatch audio, and how Shane Evans was actually on the scene and was on there. Now, was he? I have no idea, but I know that there are people who look into Shane. What do you think of Shane Evans, Bob?
I don't know. Whenever you start getting into that level of politics being involved, like the level of the conspiracy becomes problematic for me, because there's just loose lips sink ships. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's like the more people involved or thought to be involved make it less and less likely for me, because I just know people cave all the time.
True.
They just you cannot my whole if somebody wants to ask me about my theory on Murdoch, I'll tell you what that is. I think he's absolutely where he needs to be. I do not think he pulled the trigger. I think he hired two numbnuts to come on and do it like that. That's just like I have it all worked out.
I don't think he did it, and I get a lot of shit for that.
Oh, I don't think he did either.
I mean, I think that he had his people killed,
I think
but I don't
have been there.
Yeah,
I don't think he did it.
I don't think he pulled the trigger. I really don't.
I do think he's a piece of shit, though. I mean,
he's a fucking giant, flaming fucking piece of shit. Who, to me, as an attorney, anybody who steals millions of dollars from their clients that have debilitating injuries, who are absolutely counting on this money to live and their entire lives depend on it without giving a fuck, is a giant fucking turd. But my theory is that the guy just I think he hired a guy. I think that he's involved. I think that where all that cash went, I think that he is the fucking money guy for the drug trade in that area. I think I think he supplies the dough. I think he definitely pops pills as well, but I think he's the money man. I just think that he hired a couple guys, which is a cash transaction, and that shit was going down. I don't think that he was thinking properly. I think there was a lot of shit going on with them. I think that, I don't think he had the guts to fucking do it himself. I don't think he could have blown his kid's head off like that. I think, I agree. But I think, but the bottom line is, if you hire somebody to kill your fucking family, it's as if you pulled the trigger. It's the same difference. People just need to understand that. I'm not of the mindset that it was just completely random and he had nothing to do with it. That's not my thing.
If it was random, I still think they were coming after him.
Right.
And by random, it's still not random. But if he's not involved in knowing who did it or wasn't there when it happened, they did it because of him, to punish him.
Right. Well, see, I mean, that's one thought. You could bring that cartel angle in there, that. That's a potential, which plays into my kind of that he's the one funding the drug trade in that area. I mean, the money went somewhere. The money went somewhere. He's not popping that much oxy, but no man can pop that much oxy. It's just you can't do it, So it's people get super upset with me on that shit. And I'm like, look, the fucking guy's a piece of shit, and he's exactly where he deserves to be. I just don't think it went down the way the state put it out there. That's it. Period.
I agree.
No one's changing my mind on it. That's all.
Well, I'm not going to try to, so I think we're good.
Hey.
Any other case that you want to see if we agree on?
I think we probably agree on everything, pretty much.
Okay, one case I have to ask, Bob. Did you watch the Letitia Stout trial, the Colorado stepmom?
I did.
Okay, in your opinion, how did her defense attorneys handle her situation?
I think my opinion on that is, and this always goes back to the insanity defense thing that I was talking about at the beginning of the stream. And I think that fucking rancid bitch was not insane. I think she was a fucking horrific. I could not stand looking at her face. I could not stand hearing her fucking voice at all. Like, and I'm a defense attorney. Like there was something that just rubbed me so
Yada,
hard.
yada, yada, yada.
Oh God, dude, everything about her made me want to vomit in my mouth like every day. Like as I was covering it on court TV and Law and Crime, like every day we were following that trial. And like, so I think she got exactly what she deserved. I don't think any part of her was insane. I think that she was calculating all the way to the end. I think that she was sick of fucking dealing with his kid. And I think that she was a fucking giant piece of shit, period. So now if you ask me about this young girl who just got convicted in Ohio, who killed her mother.
Ooh,
Oh,
is that Powell?
Sidney Powell. Yeah.
Sidney Powell, I 100, like my heart breaks for that kid. Like something was broken in her. Like, you don't like that. That does not happen. Like, unless something like she was like her getting a scholarship to school and going away. It's different. It's not like she fucked off and was out drinking and joined a sorority and like failed out of school. It was like something broke in her mind. And like, to the extent where like, and it was like, I was having these conversations with, because like, Judge Ashley Walcott was having me on a lot for that trial. And like, we really had like some pretty great conversations because she was really like, I love her because she was willing to dig into that conversation with me about the insanity defense and how it is absolutely positively the most difficult defense to ever get a jury to buy into, because people want to hold people responsible for their shit. And if people hear about people acting in any way, shape, or form that they consider to be normal after the fact, they discount the fact that there's a potential that there was a fracture in their mind or they have a diseased mind, because people just think that when people are insane, that they constantly have to be acting insane. And that's just not how it works.
Well, mental illness, mental health issues in general, there's such a wide spectrum that is all lumped into one thing. So
because they don't fucking know. That's what I was saying. Like, we have no idea. Listen to Gacy. So I tracked down Richard Rappaport. He was one of the guys that evaluated Gacy, who clearly was insane. But there was no telling that jury that they weren't putting that guy down. I mean, he was the poster boy for the death penalty. They're like, well, I don't give a shit if he was crazy or not. He's dying. You don't kill 33 kids and live. Sorry.
No.
So it didn't matter. But like, even if you don't listen to the entire series, I implore you, all of you, go listen to, I think it's episode 33, but you should really listen to the series. It's
okay. So what do you think about Taylor Schabusiness?
Oh man, she was a tough one. I mean, aside from her name being fucking amazing,
Mind your business.
Mind your business. When I found out that she changed her name to that, I really got a lot of like, she legally changed her name to that. I'm like,
it's like I think the husband's name is Shaban or something like that.
Right, and she changed it to Schabusiness. Mind your business, motherfucker. So I thought I don't know. I kind of loved her. It's weird. It sounds like a horrible thing to say. Like, I kind of thought like this guy was a giant piece of shit. And I think it was, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about her. Like,
did you watch her with her granny panties on her
face? Yes. Like, I can't put my finger on why I didn't hate her. But I definitely thought she had mental illness, but like, I think something about me. Like, I think that guy was probably an abusive piece of shit to her. And I think that she, like, her stuffing her in a fucking, like, stuffing him in a fucking piece of luggage was kind of awesome. I don't know. Like, I don't want to piss people off.
He was in a crock pot box.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the head. Right.
His head was in a bucket.
There was another one that stuffed
Sarah Boone.
Sarah Boone the loon.
Sarah Boone's the
yeah.
As Shay said, Sarah Boone the loon.
Right. She cut him
Sarah
off.
Boone.
Fucking stuck.
She's the one who was like playing hide and seek, and the boyfriend got in the suitcase.
Yeah.
And then she's like, I didn't know he was still in the suitcase. I just went to bed.
Right.
I was tired, so I went to sleep.
Shit house rat, man. No question.
So she's not convicted yet. She's gone through like 7 defense attorneys.
Yep.
Present her.
She's something else, man. Like, I mean, like I got onto her shit when she attacked her lawyer, you know, like I was like, man, she's just a savage. Yeah, she's
Those
got
guys are both, yeah. Okay,
yeah.
so I have to ask, and I know we've been on here for almost 3 hours, so I have to let you go. But I have to know your thoughts on Barry Morphew, Suzanne Morphew, before we're done.
Who else could it have been?
Well, that's the question, especially now that she's been found, is was he even in the area? When would he have been able to put her remains in that area?
I mean, you know, they're talking about like, I wasn't on Vinny's show, but I happened to be watching it, and they're like, oh yeah, they're gonna find DNA. I'm like, fucking DNA. His DNA on her means nothing. It's his wife. So like, that's not going to be helpful. You know, DNA is not going to be helpful as to him because they live together. I mean, did you read the press releases that his attorneys put out?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh
so
yeah. Poor Barry. Everybody's just picking on him again.
Right. And you know, that there's 5 girls that like right around the same time all died. You know, went missing. So like they're pointing a finger somewhere.
Well, the one that they were searching for Edna when they actually found Suzanne, she went missing on May 3rd of this year. But then the locals actually say that this area is like known as like the boneyard, that they refer to the area as the boneyard.
Yeah. I mean, without evidence, it's going to be tough to convict them. You know what I mean? Like that's always the thing. I mean, and we know they arrested him already and they had to drop the charges. Like what were her, like forensically, I just don't know what her body will produce. That's going to be that link that we need to get him. You know what I'm saying? Like it's gotta be like, it's going to have to be like, all right, well, we found a length of rope that we were able to track a purchase that he made at Ace Hardware. Like, you know what I mean? It's going to have to be like,
it would have to be after her death because otherwise somebody could have just got the rope from the house and he bought it last year.
Exactly. You know, because like the DNA is just not it. Like, you know, I mean, DNA as to your spouse is just useless. It's like, of course his DNA is going to be on her. That's not smoking gun evidence as to her. But man, yeah, that's a tough one too. And it's like you got both the girls just like fucking backing them 100%. You know, it's like the Michael Peterson thing, man. The staircase.
Somebody asked you about that earlier too. Do you think Michael Peterson did it, or do you believe in the owl theory?
I kind of like the owl shit. I really did. Like, as crazy as it seems, because I'm like, what? Like what? The fucking owl attacks her outside, is like all up in her hair. You know, and she's running in the house.
You're a really good
to pat the owl off. She's running up the stairs. The owl's clawing her face, and she falls. I mean, it's possible. They did find microscopic owl hairs on her. How do you explain that?
They did find some owl stuff, which is really freaking weird.
Fucking weird. It's like it's such a crazy.
You make a really good owl.
Right. I mean, yeah, I imagine that's what it would be like to be like attacked by an owl. It would be pretty horrifying. You know,
I would be scared shitless.
It'd be horrifying. Okay, those dudes are badass owls.
Okay, so let's see. What's problematic with the Barry Morphew case is that during all the previous hearings and evidence, not a single time did Ellie show that he was 50 miles south of his home that weekend. I agree. They're going to need more than they ever brought before, and part of their issue was that they had everything. Their expert witnesses were deemed they couldn't be expert witnesses. Half their evidence was gone. They couldn't even use it. So to even bring a case against him again, they're going to have something. I'm hoping that whatever they do have is something that like is so unique, like a specific tarp or a specific blanket or
right. They're going to have to be able to link it to. There's got to be that connective tissue, because like what they have in the past in terms of what they arrested him initially was not enough, you know. And it's going to have, like, they haven't discovered anything new other than her remains, you know.
Yep. We don't know. We know that they supposedly identified her through her dental records and her cancer report.
I could completely see Sleuthy fighting off a cockatoo with a fucking trash can lid.
A metal one, too. It would have to be metal, not even a plastic.
Fucking bird. Let's see.
You're getting hair everywhere. A dog came back in. Let me see if anybody else had any. Okay, so do you think I'm the only hope in the Holly Bobo case, Terry Britt was a better suspect. Mrs. M would like.
Man.
I'm not familiar with that case, so I have no opinion.
I was super close to so my old private investigator, this guy Steve Yonke, big teddy bear of a guy, big fucking look a Viking looking motherfucker, actually.
Great.
But he was like, yeah, I mean, so yeah, he moved to he retired.
Indiana?
He retired as my PI and went down to he retired to the area that Holly Bobo lives, and he hit me up like when he first got down there, and there is a big contingent of people that like Terry Britt on that thing. Like, because they ended up like nailing a couple like meth head kids on it. And there's a lot of people that ain't feeling that. And it's an interesting case. Like, it's kind of like it's got that more Murray vibe, except they solved it. You know what I mean? It's like everything that kind of led up to it, like she kind of vanished. But there was a bunch of people that had eyes on her, and then boop, gone. But then, they found her, and then they get it solved. At least they got convictions on it. Like, there's just a lot of people that don't think those convictions are good, that these guys were patsies. So it's interesting. It's a pretty interesting case to look into.
Let me see what else we have in here before we wrap it up. So, okay, back to Delphi. What changed since the time when Click wrote the letter to prosecution to now, where he's denying it? I think we kind of covered a lot of that.
Yeah, we covered that. The brain goes to cops don't shit on cops. Like, all right, it's 0 criminal charges. Brittany, you're preaching to the choir. I mean. That's what.
Any circumstances where you just have somebody who has literally no criminal history besides a couple traffic violations, and all of a sudden goes, you know what? Today's the day I'm going to go to the bridge and
just fucking like brutally murder 2 girls. You know, like.
Well, then why would he put sticks on them?
On a lark. Well, because it's the ruse. It was.
Yeah.
Not the ruse. The ruse. It was a ruse.
Yeah.
It was totally a ruse.
So he poses the girls and then stages the crime scene. It makes no sense why anybody who, 1, it's their first kill, and 2, is in the middle of the day on somebody else's property is going to take the time to stage that crime scene to look like Odinites or any other cult.
So
why in the world, after I kill these 2 girls, am I going to stand there and take the time to do that?
Exactly.
Because sticks are cool. That's why.
And then apparently I brought my saw along, which I think is a whole other load of shit, because I think that whatever sticks were out there they're either just sticks that are thrown on there in a poor attempt to cover the body, or they were actually set up as some type of symbol. Either way, it's irrelevant to me, because whoever did it still took her clothes and put them on the other girl.
Yes.
And the blood
took all the clothes off of everybody, and then dressed whatever.
One of the girls was completely drained of blood, and there's no.
What does it say? Completely drained? I went back looking for that. That's all I assume that.
Yeah, I mean, the way they're putting it, like, yeah, it sounded like she was drained of blood. Like, now, I mean, theoretically, the it could have been happening in the river or the stream. I mean, you could have brought the body in there and let her bleed out there, I guess. But I don't know. Like, there's a lot of shit that went on that if, like, you're just there to get your thrill kill, like,
you're not staying.
Right. It seems like a lot of extracurricular activities that were completely unnecessary. So
right. There's a reason that one of the girls would have been dressed in the other's clothing. And I think that even if you take out some type of ritualistic anything, there'd be something, like Slulie said, there's something that you're looking at. There's books that you've read. There's videos that you've watched. There's websites you've looked at of why this is something that you would even want to do. Take away the runes and take away, maybe the blood is just arterial blood spatter, or it's somebody touched it. Take it all away. You cannot take away that he undressed both girls and dressed one of them.
100%.
It doesn't. There's something to it.
There's something to it. It's like, right. I mean, it's like they got to look into it. That's the bottom line. That, like, it has to be dug into. Like, in our only hope at this point, short of the feds poking their nose in is the defense is going to dig in. I mean, we do have a duty to investigate. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, we certainly did for Garcia. I mean, my PI was up in motherfuckers' asses on Garcia, like digging, you know. So I hope that their PI is good. It sounds like you put it up. It sounds like this dude Jensen is their PI.
Hopefully. All right, I'm going to wrap it up and let you go, and hopefully we can have you back to talk about.
Yes.
I'll talk to you about IgG. I'll talk to you about.
How about
Come
all
back
of
and
it?
pretend to be an owl if that's what your thing is. You know, whatever.
It's all my thing.
I know.
I
like it.
I'll fuck with all of it. You know what I mean? And if I don't know a case, I'm not going to lie and pretend like I know some shit about it. I'll tell you, no, never heard of it. You know, it's like I've
because then we would just have to school you on the case.
exactly,
So
exactly, which I'm cool with. Like if it's a good case and I need to hear about it, I need to hear about it. You know what I mean? But it's like between the pods, you know, where I'm working at, because like the cases I'm covering pretty heavily in the pods are Idaho 4. I did some work on Adnan. You know, obviously I'm working on Delphi heavy duty, and like we're 6 episodes in our fucking Avery thing, which I'm just telling you, our shit's everybody that has not listened to our podcast, please just put your fucking camera up, get that QR code. I'm telling you, just read, like, don't even believe me. Just read the reviews on Apple, and that'll tell you all you need to know about my podcast.
Well, if you enjoyed him here tonight, you're going to enjoy the podcast anyway.
Exactly.
Plus, you're going to get Allie on some of them. So
exactly,
Yes.
Allie's the docket queen, man. So like, if you love a strong female voice out there, I got you faded. So I've loved this. Like, honestly,
I appreciate you being here so much. This has been.
Anytime y'all want me to hang out, just reach out. I'm super
Absolutely.
excited. We could tell I'm easy. I'm cool. If
No,
I'm not
super
doing
chill. I
shit.
love it. My camera's going out.
Awesome. So, all right, I want to bounce. I'm gonna go
Thank
eat.
you guys. Make sure that you guys are following the podcast. And like I was telling you guys earlier, the YouTube channel is kind of just a little bit up and coming. The main content and anything that you need to know is on the podcast. And you can get it anywhere that you stream your podcasts. And I know the chat has been put in here a few times. I also have the chat or the link in the description of this video. So make sure that you guys are listening and paying attention to all the new things coming from the Defense Diaries podcast.
Appreciate you, and subscribe to YouTube. We're gonna try our second voyage Monday, so we'll get better at it.
I'll be there.
Hey, the video quality may suck, but the content will be good. That's our problem.
You have over 3,000 views on.
I know, I don't know how that happened with that piece of shit video, but like the content,
People were excited to watch it.
people
And they're
like,
like, now we're
people
stuck.
like
We have
me
to
and
stick
people-
through it.
yeah, dude, I know. I wanted to bail on that thing so bad. I'm like, oh my god,
You did. You tried hard, but
I really,
nobody was letting you go. They're like, no, we're fine. We don't care if you sound like a chipmunk.
right?
want
Yeah.
Stay here anyway.
Yeah, and I owed it to him because it took us so long to figure out how to get that thing streaming. So we'll work out all those little, you know, those hiccups. But yeah, no, like hit me up anytime you guys want me to hang.
Absolutely. We appreciate you. I
Yes,
had a great
definitely.
time.
All right, you guys have an awesome weekend.
You too.
You too.
All right, see y'all. Thanks for hanging.
Aw, Sleuthy. Sleuthy said, I have never waited an hour in a chat for a live to wait ever. You hung in there the whole time. Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate you being here. In Bob we trust. Thank you, MK. Thank you, my King of Kings. Thank you guys. Thank you all of you for guys. Blah, blah, blah. I can't even talk. That's when I know I gotta stop because my words don't even make sense. Oh my gosh. I thank you guys so much for hanging out. And as I always tell you, I know that you guys have 1,000 other things that you could be doing, and you choose to spend your time here with us, me and Sluice Investigates.
Yes.
And I am so happy that Bob was able to come on. That was so insightful and just enjoyable to have a conversation with him. And I can guarantee there'll be things that we don't agree on.
Oh yeah, but that's the
People agree
awesome
on
thing
it.
about like people in this network is you can talk and disagree and still have
Yeah.
a really great ethical conversation.
Yep. Well, that's the good part about it. So I appreciate all of you guys being here. Just know that I know that your time is valuable, and you spending it here with me and Sluice and Bob, it means the world to me. And I appreciate each and every one of you. I will most likely be back Monday. No, I won't. I will be back Tuesday. I do. I just realized that I have to take the tiny human to the dentist on Monday, so I
Oh.
will be back on Tuesday.
It's on Tuesday.
On Tuesday, loves, on Tuesday. All right. Good night, everybody. Go enjoy the rest of your Saturday and Sunday. And Sluice, I love you, girl. Thank you
I
very
love
much.
you too,
And
girl. You're
everybody in
welcome.
chat, all you wrenches, all you mods, all you people, you guys are amazing. Love you all.